In the public portion of this meeting, I'll accept any motions from the council. Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make the motion if Judge Ward accused himself in the case, and that if Judge Selector should accuse himself as well, then the council would prefer that the chief judge go through the proper procedures to select the judge.
Second.
I got a motion, I have a second. Is there any further comments?
My only comment is that concise enough, attorneys?
I think we understand the intent, which is for the first judge to go ahead and recuse himself, to not object to the second judge recusing himself, and to go ahead and proceed with the administrative order.
Correct.
That's the motion. We have a second. Without any further discussion, we'll go ahead and take a vote. Ayes have it, unanimous, so moved.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move to authorize the Warner Law Firm to hire Chandler and Associates of Panama City, Inc. as the real estate appraisal consultants in this case in the amount not to exceed $24,000.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a second. Is there any further discussion on this motion? Seeing none, we'll vote. There you go. Vote is unanimous. Ayes have it, so moved.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize city manager and our city attorney to engage in mitigation for the benefit, mediation on benefit of the, for the city. Is that clear enough, Kyle?
I think I understand the intent is let's mediate the case.
Second.
I have a motion and I have a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none? The vote is unanimous, so moved. And now, I'm going to go ahead and, thank you very much. You are finished. All right. First up, we're going to have the invocation. Captain Harold, come on up and bless us. Everyone stand.
Most gracious Heavenly Father, I come before your throne of grace this evening. You know I'm kind of out of my element, Lord, but I'm here to represent First Baptist Church and just come before your throne of grace, Lord, to thank you for all those in attendance here this evening, the city council and the public, Lord, to come to do the business of here in your little city in Destin. We're growing so fast and going through so much growing pains, and it's exploding, it seems like, Lord, and they have a big job in front of them. So we pray, Lord, your divine intervention. Give them the mindset, Lord, to do everything that is upholding and right for the majority of the folks, because everybody's never going to be pleased. We know that, Lord, but everybody can live together in harmony, and so we pray that. Lord, I want to thank you for seeing us through the fishing season so far. It's been good, but the storms are coming, Lord, and we see we got one down hanging out in Louisiana right off the coast. So we pray, Lord, that it would dissipate and not be anything that would disrupt our economy, because this is our busy time of year for all those in the tourist industry, which we're mainly about. We pray, Lord, that you would be with us now. Send your Holy Spirit to dwell amongst us. Guide and direct us in all we say and do, when we all be pleasing in your sight. We pray it all in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Captain Harold. Captain Harold's been leading us in prayer every morning out on the bait banks. So the entire Destin fishing fleet has been starting its day with the prayers of Captain Harold. And it's been a real blessing to our whole fleet. Thank you, Captain Harold. All right, first up is agenda approval. I'll entertain a motion at this time or any recommendations for changes.
Make a recommendation to approve?
Second.
Go ahead and take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. First up, Public Works, Public Safety Committee Work Plan, sir.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This is getting to be a habit. I'm not sure it's a good habit, so. Jim Wood, 3790 Misty Way, your Public Works Public Safety Chairman. You have tonight before you our next iteration of our work plan. No huge changes from last time. One new addition, we have added stormwater discussions to our monthly agendas. I don't remember any citizens coming to us so far with any issues, but it's there on the agenda if they want to be able to do that. So I've continued my plan of bringing in lots of guest speakers that can brief us up on things that might make our decision-making process better. Things like Mid-Bay Bridge Authority, Sheriff's Office, Destin Beach Safety, Destin Water Users, and several briefings from the staff this year. We reviewed road surfacing, road restriping, sidewalk maintenance priorities all for this year. We continue to divide the city of Destin into 7 areas, just like you did when you were on the committee, Mr. Bagby. And we look over those areas for issues and bring them back to our committee and report back. Okay, now let's talk money for a minute. For FY22, though I guess it was a traffic safety fund that got $100,000. And I guess Public Services used that to buy some Hawk flashing beacons and some things around the elementary school, 2 message boards, and I know we did a stop sign at the corner of Luke and Dolphin. I'm assuming that was part of that expenditure. For FY23, I'm almost embarrassed to say the amount of money I got on an email tonight, $271,000. I feel like I'm on the city council again. So now, I'm sure Mr. Bagby's waiting on me to brief my finance plan, and I don't have it tonight, so I'm going to have to apologize for that. But what I can do, tomorrow night I have a meeting. We can discuss options tomorrow night, give them to Mr. Burgess. He can have the staff analyze those, bring them back to our 9 August meeting. I'll be back from out of town. And then at your 15 August meeting, I can brief y'all if you come up with something worthwhile. Hopefully we do. I'm sure we can spend some of that. So, otherwise, and I know, I guess Captain Staples is behind me to talk about speed humps over on Beach Drive. I've already talked to him out in the hall out there. I've invited him to my meeting tomorrow night. And whether or not, I think most of our major collectors usually have been council direct for speed humps, not so much 85th percentile studies. We'll see what y'all want to do on that. But subject to your questions, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
I got a question for you, Jim. When you guys meet and seeing how you do have a little bit of extra expenditures, my wife drives on Old 98 from work home every single day. Of course, in the wintertime at 5 o'clock, it's dark. And when she has been burning my ear for months now, those crosswalks even are not lit. And there's so many people coming off the beach or actually going to the beach, watch the sunset, what have you. If there's any way possible to take stock of all those crosswalks that are within our footprint.
Right.
And see if we can't get those flashing lights on the pavement and the one by the road, so when people go to cross, you know, especially as the sun's going down, you're driving in the sun, those flashes are huge. And she's remarked to me she's surprised that no one has been severely injured to date. But that'd be a project I'd really like.
Those kind of things are on my list to look at already, so
Great.
I'm with you on that.
All right, that's the only ask I.
And Mayor, I would also reinforce that sentiment, and I was speaking to some residents of Crystal Beach, not even your wife, and they came to me with the same suggestion. They're very concerned about people getting hit at night going across those crosswalks, so
Got it.
you guys could look at that very closely. I think that'll probably be one of our priorities too.
All right, we can definitely handle that. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think Sam's already brought that up to y'all before. Herman?
They did.
Yeah, okay.
Yes, well, among other things, yes.
Yeah, among other things she did. And I just want to be clear on the money, clear from my understanding, on the money that they get. If, once you've prioritized sidewalks and
Right.
paving and striping, you could use that money to get some of the, you only funded the top 9, you could get number 10
Yes.
in that, is
I
that
think,
correct?
I mean, we could do, I think,
You can pretty much
transportation.
do what you want, but I just want to make sure, is Crystal over there or Lance?
Yeah, we'll look at the priority list and see what's next in the list that didn't get done.
Okay.
See if there's things that we want to do.
It's
So,
kind of like the TPO process.
Roger that.
Okay.
I know that well, so thank you.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Bobby.
So for citizens or for myself who see things that are alarming, what is the best process for people to report any kind of safety issue that needs to go through the committee?
Well, you can contact Mike Burgess, who's our committee mentor, or you can contact me. Our meetings are the second Tuesday of each month in this room at 5:30. We have one tomorrow night. You're welcome to show up. Is it only one of you shows up? So, well, it's an announced public meeting. I guess more than one of you could if you wanted to. But so if you want to come present something, feel free to come. So
Awesome, thank you.
we'd love to have you.
Jim,
Yes, sir.
thank you, and I will move that the city council adopt the 22-23 Public Works, Public Safety Committee's work plan for 22-23.
I second it.
I got a motion, I have a second. Let's go ahead and take a vote if there's no further discussion. Thank you, Mr. Woods.
Thanks, Jim.
Vote is unanimous. Ayes have it, so moved. Mr. Burgess, while we're on that discussion, I saw a little email about paving projects for the rest of the year that we're not going to be able to do. So that should loosen up some additional funding, I would imagine, if we could redirect that in some other area. We can talk about that in our budget workshop on Thursday. But would you just like to expound on that a little bit, what's going on with the aggregate for our continuing contract?
Sure. Mr. Mayor, Council, we received a letter 2 Fridays ago from our paving contractor, H&T, out of Freeport, and they basically said that they weren't going to be able to fulfill any more of the purchase orders that we've given them for the remainder of the year because the asphalt plant, the C.W. Roberts plant, is running low on aggregate, which is the stone that goes into asphalt. And the reason that there is kind of odd supply chain issues, but the reason that they can't get enough aggregate is the lack of railroad conductors availability. So that aggregate is transported by rail, and because they have an insufficient number or availability of train conductors, they're only going to be able to fulfill basically FDOT projects for the foreseeable future. And I'm sure as soon as that changes, they will let us know.
Thank you. I was going to ask about this later, so I'll take the time now. They do a lot of work for a lot of people, not only the city of Destin. And I believe they're one of 2 of our contractors, or 3 maybe, or are they the only one? So should we expect that H&T will not be doing any asphalt at any property in the city of Destin for the next year?
I can't speak intelligently to that, but I do know what that letter said.
Right.
I did, what is the old adage, trust but verify? I did call another paving contractor and was told the exact same thing.
Same thing.
That there is an aggregate shortage and basically that the C.W. Roberts plan is going to be almost working exclusively to support like the 85 project and the Crestview bypass and all that are currently under reconstruction right now.
And is H&T our one and only option for some of our street projects, or do we have a second one?
This is the last year of their contract. They've undergone 4 extensions of that initial. We are about to put an RFB back out on the street. It's in review right now. It'll probably be out in the next week or 2. So we'll see what types of responses we do get, and if we get responses with conditions, with the availability of asphalt. Asphalt has to be transported in a heated dump truck or it'll start to set up. So, you can't truck it in from Pensacola or, parts unknown. You have to have pretty much a local provider, C.W. Roberts being the closest.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mike, you're off the hook. All right, coming up next, Captain Harold, your request for speed humps. And Captain Harold standing in for Pastor Ferris, who had to go attend a funeral up north. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Mayor, I've got some little flyers here. did, I'll pass them out in just a second. There's concern on Beach Drive. Mr. Wood said that there's a couple of humps on the north side of Kelly Street, going around that corner down by the boat launching ramp. But on the south side, there isn't any. And there's no egress for driveways along there. So it's a pretty straight shot to the highway from Kelly Street, from Airport Road going down, which is not really Airport Road. What is that? Legion Drive. So they come through there pretty fast, and of course, we got the little school there. Methodist Church has got a little school there. And they come around, when they go down the side street right there by our church, they'll cut through our parking lot. We got a little speed bump in there, but they're coming through there, and parents are walking their kids through there. So anyway, it's kind of out of my element. I'm not really adequate speaker on this thing, but if we could slow them down a little bit, I think it would be a big help.
Thank you, Captain Harold. Yeah, we had some pictures in our briefing document of all the roads and stuff, so I think everybody's fairly familiar. Normally, we entertain a motion to that effect and then have discussion afterwards, so I'll entertain a motion about speed bumps in those locations that they're requesting at this time. Mr.
I'll make a
Dest-
motion.
Okay, I had Dewey, were you going to make the motion? I was. Yes, go ahead, Dewey, I had you up.
I'll move that we direct the Public Works Department to bring back an estimate for construction of speed bumps in that area.
Mr. Mayor, if I can jump in just for a moment, those speed bumps are made out of asphalt. It's not funny, but I'm glad y'all thought it was. But there are some alternative products out there that are available.
That's funny.
In particular, they're not plastic. They're composite material way out Indian Bayou North. I think there are two sets of them out there if y'all want to go see what they look like. But they're not wide enough typically to put in crosswalks, but we can research if they make speed table type setups that are made out of that composite material.
Sounds good.
And they do, and I've got a catalog full of them. I hope I can go home and find it for you.
So I'll second Dewey's motion.
Any further discussion on, if you'll notice on the flyer, they have some recommendations where they would like those bumps, so we'll leave that up to our Public Works guys to make the appropriate decisions, working with Jim, and they could come up with a plan and bring it back to us. But I got a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion on this? Go ahead.
When you bring it back, can you bring back a prioritization too? 3 speed humps in 80 feet just seems overkill to me. I understand what we're trying to do, and I look at the one there by Beach and Ben Arrow, and there's no markings in it. It's just 2 white lines across at least make it look like a crosswalk where people kind of have that visual stimulation, but we'll see what you guys bring back.
Yeah, and I think a timeline too, just for general information, is school starts after the 10th of August. So this is a little bit time sensitive. If you guys could put a little speed to a prioritization for it, I think that's what they're kind of getting at too. All right, thank you very much. We got a motion. We have a second. Captain Harold? 4:30 comes early, doesn't it, sir? All right, we have a motion. We have a second. Let's take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. All righty. Right now is time for public comment. You have 3 minutes. At about 2:45, I'll tell you politely to wrap up your thoughts, and we'll move right on through the thing. I did have a request from Mr. Mike to speak first because he's got to go, so go ahead. We'll open up public testimony with Mr. Buckingham.
Mike Buckingham, 510 Calhoun. Thank you all. I've been up here quite a few times in the past 2 years with a vision, with a passion that I have. regarding our fishermen, our fishing heritage. And I think some of you have heard my speech before that we need a city marina. I spoke to a couple of property owners down there in the harbor that have a property big enough to do a city marina. And without getting into it too heavy, I would really like this council to really start thinking real heavily about being able to bring back nothing wrong with having a couple tournaments here. Let's get the bill fishing tournaments back here. Let's protect the fishing heritage we have, the fishermen here. And with the city marina, I've done my homework. I've flown from California to the East Coast, to the South. I've flown everywhere looking at all these city marinas in the last 3 years, and it's a very lucrative, makes money. And how nice it would be for us to have something like that in our community, to open our harbor back up and bring the harbor back to, I say bring it back, help bring it to what we know, what we remember, the fishing community. So I would like that if y'all would please, if any of you have any questions, after the meeting or tomorrow or the next day, please pick the phone up and call me, and I'll be more than happy to fill in what I know about. Real quick, because I still have 30 seconds. I wouldn't. Oh, I'm gonna get this done. Yeah, I told you a long time ago, I'm gonna get this done. Somehow, some way, I'm gonna count on y'all to work with me, and let's get this thing done. Thank you, appreciate y'all.
I got one more. Mike, while you're there, can you give us an update on the Royal Melbourne Heritage Park, please?
Well, okay, so real quick in a nutshell, the contractors walked off the job again, second time, but I think it'd be better for you to speak with your attorney, on this issue, but they've walked off the job again. So, I don't know how much it'd probably be best for me not to. Thank you, sir.
We'll put that one back in the lap of Kyle. Thank you, Mike. Next up, anyone wants to come up? Anyone over here? Come on up, Marcy. All right. Yeah, we started kind of here in the middle.
That's a good looking shirt you got there.
I like that shirt.
Okay. John King. I don't live in Walton County. I live in 539 Botany Boulevard, Santa Rosa Beach. I was a Destin resident since before it was a city. I heard through the grapevine you guys were going to talk about postponing a vote on the Cross Connector Road. Oh, okay. Well, great.
You need to start growing another vine.
Sir?
You need to start growing another grapevine.
Well,
you're here.
Not to be catty, it's been 16 years of this and none of this. So let's get it done. There's I brought Curtis Smith, my engineer, on a project, and this just kind of happened in passing that he had done a project for me and that had took some very expensive and extensive exfiltration because of the size of the building this tenant wanted. And so I looked at your all's project. You've got 6 acres and 31,000 square feet of pavement. It would be absurd to have exfiltration system. It's expensive. You're going to spend $300,000 on exfiltration. If you take any more time, the townhouses that you're going to buy are going to cost you. They've already cost you from the last council $1 million extra. You're going to spend more money on the townhouses. If you want some park, take the hundreds of thousands of dollars and not putting exfiltration in, and the hundreds of thousands of dollars of appreciation potentially again. And you got $1 million to spend on parkland. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Yes, sir. Up next. Come on up. Mike's up. Go ahead. Mike. No.
No, Marcy. No. Time's up. You did your 3 minutes.
I'll speak for 2 minutes, you get 1. You're welcome. Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. Real quick, Michael Burgess, I'm on Public Works. We had a conversation over the past year about crosswalks and lighting, and we had looked at, can you explain that to them so they'll know what we were talking about? And then I just want to real quick say one other thing, and then I'll walk away and you can have my last minute. Does anybody know about this thing that's out in the harbor that's like this house that's got a putt-putt course on it, and it's out in front of AJ's or something, and everyone's calling me about it and asking me what I know about it? That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Go ahead, Mike. I'll be flexible tonight.
Sorry, thanks. Hey, 30 years of being in infrastructure business, y'all know that's what I've done. I think the world of Mr. King. I just disagree with what he's saying. You can't buy a lot in Destin for $300,000. If it's $300,000 for infrastructure, do it. Then we get a ground that we can do something with. Once you put a swell in there, you can't do nothing with it. You can't put a park in a swell. It's illegal. So think hard about putting a gravel system in there. Think hard about putting a flat surface. It will be a park if you want a park. We've talked about it forever, but $300,000 is nothing. You can't buy anything in Destin for $300,000. So why are we going to take $300,000 worth of dirt out of a hole and then have a hole? Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Oh, you already talked. Hang out. You. Michael?
Tell us.
Yes, sir. No, the product we had looked at was a
I'll give you 3 minutes, Michael.
Okay, go ahead and start the clock, Ray. The product we were looking at was a combination Hawk beacon, the rectangular rapid flashing beacons like you see, and it had a street light on it as well. But unfortunately, it is not a Florida DOT approved product. So we've kind of had a little setback in that front. But we're still out there looking for other options. We are in the process of converting a lot of our streetlights into LED from the high pressure sodium. So we may be able to take that opportunity to maybe enhance some lighting in a few other areas.
Yeah, just the crosswalk lights that work best for me are the ones that are on the road, that are blinking across the road in the crosswalk and a flashing light on a pole. The ones just on a pole, for some reason, they're real easy to miss. But those ones on the ground, because you're looking at the ground, you're watching your road, the ones in Walton County that I was exposed to on July 4th, the ones with the blinking lights that almost like your white lights on going into runway, those are the most effective from an intent gaining your attention. So those would be the ones that I would highly recommend more than anything else. Yeah, the dog park's got them. We got some floating around here. I just think it needs to be like our standard, however long it takes a while. That should be our standard crosswalk scenario, if possible. That's something you guys could talk about and prioritize that.
And I would echo that thought. That's what we're looking for. I don't know how we can send this message any stronger. Do you, Mayor?
Flyers, smoke signals, maybe shoot a flare in the air. I think they got it this time, though. Right, guys? All right, thanks. All right, let's move on. Any more public comment? Come on up, Mr. Perry. You know the routine.
Claude, Claude Perry at 732 Harbor Boulevard. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. I don't know how many of you saw this article. It was very brief, just before the 1st of July, that said that the PD&E study that the state was doing was now considering adding 2 more lanes to US 98 through Destin. Are y'all aware of that? And I was certainly not aware of it. I have not heard a word about it. And I was concerned as a property owner, as a residential owner, and a commercial property owner. You'd have to abandon the earlier plans we had to have wider sidewalks and landscaping, or to get within a 100-foot right-of-way, 2 more lanes. I just don't see how they can do that. And I was wondering if our staff knew anything about this, and or maybe our representative, Rodney, I believe you are on it, and Teresa, you're on it. Do you know what they're talking about? Where did this come
It's
from?
just a study. They are looking at the feasibility. They have not even begun it. And I think Catherine answered a lot of the questions to the reporter that called me about the study because I wasn't at liberty to discuss it any further. Can you at least tell him what is public knowledge on that study?
Well, in all honesty, the reporter never called city staff and had written the article without our acknowledgement, but I can defer to Joe Bodie that can relay more information about what we know.
Well, again, it is a feasibility study to see if it's even doable, practicable, to create a 6-lane roadway section with the 10-foot wide sidewalks that currently that are in our code, along with multiple other items, safety items. They're going to be looking at our intersections to see how we can make them more efficient as part of that study. But at this point, they're still only gathering information.
And again, that reporter was fishing when he called me to find out about this feasibility study, and instead of calling and getting protocol, the correct answer of that it's just going to be a feasibility study, it's not going to happen, he just put it in the paper. So people like you panic like, wait a minute, we haven't heard anything about this. He was a very aggressive reporter and didn't want to hear no.
Well, usually where there's some smoke, there's some fire, but what I'm trying to, I think it would be prudent for the city to have you and Rodney as our representatives to try to squash this. This is just insane. And that's what, I guess they want some input from the city, from the stakeholders, people that are involved. But I thought it important for y'all to be aware that this is going on. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank
Barron.
you, Claude.
I share your concern, Claude, and I tell you, did this ever come up to the TPO? Who's our TPO rep?
I am. Jim Potter.
Okay, this is the kind of thing, because
Rodney and I are both the reps, but
Okay.
Jim was at the ground floor of the discussions, so I would like for Jim, with his expertise, to tell us exactly how far this hasn't gone.
Well, it hasn't gone very far, because again, all it is a feasibility study.
Thank you.
And look and
Okay.
see, is it possible? And everybody, all y'all know, I know, it ain't doable. You have to lose buildings, sidewalks, bike lanes, whatever else you want to do, you're not going to be able to do.
Too small of a bridge.
So the question is, going back to Greg Casella's time, for those that remember him, this corridor has now been studied at least 3 times. One time was enough, so I'm not sure why this is being studied again. I know there's some other things being looked at, like median cuts. I've heard some rumors of closing some median cuts, not knowing which ones they're talking about yet, but we'll see.
Jim, did the TPO initiate this study, or is this just something
No,
FDOT did off on
we
their
don't- We
own?
don't normally initiate
Here's
hardly
my
anything.
concern, and this is why when I saw it in the paper, I was ticked off. I'll just be honest with you. Number one, we didn't know about it, okay? And you can say it's a feasibility study. Let me tell you something. 2 years before anything was done to 6-lane 98 from Airport down to Walton County, guess what they did? They did a feasibility study, and they said, oh, well, you can't do it here because look at all these power lines going across here at the Gulf Power Station. You couldn't do it, and then over at the church, at the Village Baptist Church, you'll remember all the little poster boards all around the room there. And, oh, well, it's just a feasibility, it's just PD&E. No, get out in front of the dadgum thing and let the people of Destin get their input into this. So we should have known. I was shocked too, and I agree with you that we need to get out in front of this. And yes, they're going to study that corridor every 5-6 years from now to eternity. But we need to know what the scope of that PD&E study is, who's doing it, when they're going to do it, and everything else. And so I agree. I wish either in your capacity as Public Works, Public Safety, or as a TPO civilian rep, or whatever the heck your title is on that group,
I got
you
too
come
many of
and
them.
tell us, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jim.
Jim might remember this one. He was on council at the time. I swear when they brought us the designs for what we have now, I'm almost certain they brought us, DOT brought us something that showed 6-laning through Destin, and it had, all the medians were taken out, and it said we had put 2 roundabouts or something down in 98, and we was like, that ain't never gonna happen, a 6-lane or 3-lane roundabouts or something, but they took all the medians out, shortened up the sidewalks, and to get 6 lanes down through, and I swear we had it.
Yeah, I don't think any of us need to get nervous until they 6-lane the island and put a new $150 million bridge into the city of Destin.
But
Then
they-
maybe we need to pay attention.
But they did come to the
Yeah, I
council
remember,
and
I've seen
ask.
that drawing.
Yeah, they did
You're
come to
right,
the council
right.
and ask, so.
All right, let's press on. Go ahead, Jim. I'm going to close public comment after this. I'll look up one more time.
There is one thing that is supposed to be mentioned in this study that's important, and I've talked about this before. A future, new Marlar Bridge. Now, the bridge itself is not going to be in there. There are supposed to be some comments in there about how a bridge might be synthesized into the current roadway at different angles. There's supposed to be some comments in there. Those, to me, are big, because we've never really had that conversation before. So anything that starts there might get traction, so that we need to keep up with. So
Yeah, and that bridge is 50 years old, so it's
time.
It's going to be looked at here in the next 2 decades at least.
Exactly.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, can I just make a comment since
Go
we're
ahead.
on this topic? I just want the public to know that on July the 21st at 10 a.m. at the County Administrative Building, the TPO is holding a workshop on all of their upcoming projects and whatnot. It's open to the public. That's at 10 a.m. And then again at 2 p.m. is when the actual TPO committees meet, but the public is also invited to attend those. So if you're truly interested in all the different projects happening around there, that would be a good place for people to go.
Thank you, Lance. All right. I'm going to close the public comment period. I want to remind everyone that there'll be another opportunity for public comment at the very ending of the meeting, if you can tolerate it that long. All right. Item number 3, consent agenda. I'll entertain a motion at this time.
I'll make that motion to approve.
I'll ask that we pull item A.
Aren't we supposed to do that at the agenda approval period at the first of the meeting, Jim?
You can pull it anytime. Any council member can do that.
All right. Which one? A. All right. So now,
I'll make
change your
that
motion
motion
B through M.
minus A from B through M to approve the consent agenda.
All right, I have a motion. I have a second. Let's go ahead and vote. Ayes have it, unanimous, so moved. Mr. Bagby, seeing how you pulled it, you start it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is an incomplete item. We either need to put in the resolution 2206, or we need to put in the agreement with, let me go back to the agreement here, with the company, the amount. Nowhere in the current, in resolution 2206, or in the agenda item, or in the agreement with the company that handles, do we have the amount? So the amount would be 0 until we have an amount in there.
So I can help on this, and Ms. Strickland may want to join in, but the amount should read 5%, and that is based on what's in the city manager's contract. The logic behind leaving it blank at
No,
first.
it said it in the old.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. The logic
one?
in leaving it blank initially, and it may or may not have been a flawed logic, but was because at times the staff needs to be able to adjust the amount going in, because the city cannot put in more than the allowed IRS maximum. So if they were just trying to make it easier to make corrections moving forward. So, but it is 5%, and then the sentence in that, on that form does allude to the contract after that. So
Crystal, would you
that
like
was an
to,
omission on our part.
Crystal, would you like to add to anything to what Lance just said?
Yeah, basically, it is 5%, and the resolution that we're adopting this evening is reestablishing Resolution 02, which in paragraph 2 states that in accordance with the city manager's employment contract, 5% will be put into the 401A. But I do agree with Mr. Bagby that it would be, instead of having to dive down into the exhibits, it would be better if it was front and center on the plan adoption agreement. So we'll make that change.
And so I will make the motion that we approve 3A with the addition of up to 5% as our contribution to the city manager's plan.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion or comments? Seeing none? Gotta hold your mouth right when setting a hook. Do a roll call then. Can somebody help us out here?
You need a battery, Rodney?
Hold on.
I think Bobby took your battery out a couple meeting ago when you weren't here and gave it to Dewey, if I recall. He wasn't here.
Hold on. Technology is a wonderful thing.
Kick him while he's under that bus, man.
There we go. Thank you, sir. The vote is unanimous, so moved. City manager report. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First up, we've got a post-certificate of occupancy building inspections update. If you remember, a while back, council had asked staff to look at potential measures to hopefully prevent any more tragedies like that occurred in South Florida earlier this year. We then decided to wait and see what actions the state took, and the state has since made a move on that. As far as it impacts the city of Destin, any building 25 years or older must get inspected, and then every 10 years after that be re-inspected. The state statute does put some responsibilities on the city, and that's why we are here looking for direction and hopefully some direction for our staff to bring back an ordinance with some teeth so that we can enforce this also.
I'd like to make a motion to move, let's see, I move that the city council direct, that's me. I direct the city land use attorney and staff to prepare an ordinance compliant with the new state law.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Ayes have it, so moved.
Next up, we've got the 90% update on the Crosstown Connector. We have representatives from Atkins. We have Lewis here and company for questions on all of these. Take it away, sir.
Thank you. Members of council, thanks for having me back. I'm here to give you a brief update on the progress of the Destin Crosstown Connector project. We just submitted 90% plans on May 31st, and those included all of the direction and typical design progress coming from the 60% plans. One of the major items going into the 90% is updating the quantities and cost estimate. That came in at $9.1 million compared to the previous 100% plans was at $4.7 million. So that was noteworthy for you guys to hear. Also with the plans, the design updates included updates to the roadway plans, signing pavement markings, drainage and permitting, landscaping, and lighting. Next slide. So just a few of the major items on the roadway plans. We were designating the right-of-way at the back of curb, and that was one of the items of discussion from previous submittals. We added additional 10-foot sidewalks at locations where previously we thought weren't feasible. We expanded the design process on those and were able to get additional 10-foot sidewalks. And then some safety improvements with reducing various radii at driveway turnouts and intersections in an effort to slow down traffic, either coming through the corridor or coming on and off the side streets. The landscaping plan developed with location and planning types to meet city code. That was part of the 90% deep development. Also site distance and curvature analysis. So again, a safety aspect, make sure you're not planting trees too close to corners, impeding site distance. And then again, updated quantities that went into our cost estimate. The lighting updates, there were slight modifications to match the roadway changes. As you see, they're typical spaced at 100-foot intervals along the back of the sidewalk. And the type is an architectural pole with an architectural type fixture. Moving forward from 90s to 100%, some of the tasks we have to do are to address the 90% city comments, develop our specifications package, and our 100% submittal is scheduled for September of this year. Also ongoing is the PD&E reevaluation from the previous design. We are in the process of designating the right-of-way at the back of curb, submitting the major development order and subdivision application. Also in progress is the right-of-way acquisition, separate from the plans development, but also in progress at the moment. And then the Northwest Florida Water Management District permit application, that will be submitted to the city tomorrow for review and then passed along to the district. Here's just a quick look at the right-of-way acquisition, which I understand there's another agenda item, so won't go too far into. But the shades of red, those are the parcels that need to be acquired still at this point, and green is what is currently owned by the city. So that is for information graphics. That concludes my update, if anyone has any questions.
Any questions from council? Go ahead, Mr. Braden.
Am I looking at it right that on Benning Drive and Azalea, there's not a roundabout there? There's going to be a stop signs there, or what's going to be there?
On the left-hand side, correct, that is not a roundabout. It will be stop signs, yes.
So that'll be on Legion, and Benning Drive is going to be stop signs. Okay, thank you.
Kevin?
I'd like to go ahead and move the city council direct city manager to continue the design of the Destin Crosstown Connector as presented, and I have a question.
Second.
Awesome, thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Schmidt and then Mr. Dessen.
I know you said you're going to continue working on the 90% or 60% plans or 90% plan comments or something. Some of the comments that we had, the 60%, I believe, talked about on the north side of the connector, utilizing, you showed us a lot of designs, I think, at that 60% plan, ideas and options. Were we potentially ever going to utilize that north side to have more of a bench or a fountain, or do you recall what I'm talking about?
Right, yes, and we do have...
Is that still a possibility, or?
Right, yes, I think that is a separate effort from this design project, but there is the ample space there to the north side. There's over an acre of available space for parks, recreation.
So right now, the plan is just kind of leaving it as
Correct.
it is? in the
Yes,
designs. Okay.
we are doing the landscaping to allow for
Future stuff.
future developments, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dester.
Thank you. I was looking at the pond levels. I think it was on 4.1, which was a chart. Did I read that correct, that the pond was going to be 20 feet during 100 or 25-year storm events?
I don't have that information off the top of my head, but I can certainly look into any questions and give you that
Well,
information.
4.1 is here. Maybe you don't have a copy of this presentation? Can we bring it up? Let me look here. It's under the stormwater, and it says page 8 of 15, maybe? And I was trying to make sure that I was interpreting these ground surface elevations or the water depth. Jim, you're a good engineer. Can you?
So on page 8 of 15 of the stormwater.
Right.
Here, you can just look at that table right there.
That give us an indication of the depth of the water in the pond during these storm events?
Or is that the depth of the groundwater below?
Yeah, I was a little
the bottom
confused.
of the pond, I think is what you want to just tell us what that table tells us.
So that is correct. It's showing the estimated depth of groundwater at various locations. So you've got your surface elevations, and then the other column I saw was the depth of water below the groundwater elevation.
Okay, so later on into this, it says that in a 100-year storm event, the water will still be 1 foot below the top of the swale. And so how deep is that water?
Right, yes, I believe the water is designed to be to have 1 foot of freeboard over the swale.
Right.
You know, beyond that, I'm not sure. I'm not the drainage engineer, but we can certainly get you
just
answers to questions.
Trying to figure out exactly how deep the water is in there, but be that as it may, I still think that we need to not have that drainage swale in there, of course, as we discussed the last time. It just doesn't make sense. It takes away our ability to put a linear park down the side, and it can be accomplished, as we've discussed, at the $300,000 it may cost to put the pipes in. You can't even buy a lot hardly to build a house in Destin right now. So never made sense to put this in like this. Council voted, I think, 3-3 with the mayor tying last time. And I would entertain that we need to go and fix it where we can have a linear park. But back to the bigger picture of this issue, and I thought it was quite telling that the conclusion is that the benefit of this is it will address traffic congestion on 98. Well, the problem is I think that's probably far from true. We still have not been able to get any kind of indication of how we're going to get this crosstown connector back onto 98. The only opportunity we appear to have is at Stallman Avenue, which is the most dysfunctional intersection we have in Destin. Now, there's a reason, for those of you that were not here, is that intersection is so dysfunctional. When the city approved the development of Emerald Grand, we failed to require turning bays, either eastbound or westbound, to handle the kind of traffic that intersection was going to have now that we built Emerald Grand. Consequently, for the last 10 years, 15, however many it is, we've lived with traffic backing up to Gulf Shores to our east and a mile or two over the Destin Bridge to our west every afternoon in the summer. We were about to make a mistake that is going to make that mistake look like small potatoes. We're going to, as the study itself says, we're going to address traffic congestion on 98 by routing it through this corridor through residential areas of Destin and then reroute it right back onto the Stallman intersection. That's a terrible problem. Our job up here is to try to make things better. It's certainly not to make things worse. We are plunging ahead because for 16 years we've pursued a bad solution. And 16 years of pursuit of a bad solution doesn't turn it into a good solution. Until we can figure out how to put that traffic back onto 98 and actually improve traffic congestion on 98, this is one of the worst ideas in my 20, 30 years at this council that I've ever seen us pursue with vigor. In addition to that, our price, if I understand your numbers, have gone from 4.5 to 9 million.
Correct, yes.
Good God, what are we doing? So my direction to the council is, let's figure out how we're going to get that traffic back on to 98 at Stallman and actually make things better, not worse. So, you know, I can't support this design, number one, because it's got that crazy pond in it. And number two, the whole idea is about to crash into a wall, and the people of Destin, once we get this completed, are probably going to run us out of town on a rail. Because what in the world have we just done to them? The sentiment was pretty strong after we approved what's at the foot of the bridge at Stallman now, and they've had to live with that now for 15 or 20 years. We're about to compound that problem unless we step back and figure out how to get the traffic back onto 98.
Mr. King?
Thank you, sir. Yeah, and Mr. Destin, with all due respect, we ran into this. I think we had this sort of discussion last time we had this, and, you know, in the beginning, my understanding was that this crosstown connector, which we purchased this property in 2008 for $5 million, $4.5 million, was to get traffic off of Legion Drive and Mountain Drive. In that time, I've heard multiple complaints of people who have children on those streets, who have dogs who've been run over. And my understanding of this project was that it was to get traffic across town. Now, let me just say this. I lived just out of sight. If you're looking at the map of the aerial photo of this project, I lived about a 1/10 of a mile from the intersection where it would cross into Benning Drive. Mr. Wagner lives there now. He probably travels the same route to get here on Monday nights at 5:30 that I did. I left an hour early. I left a half an hour earlier than I normally would on multiple occasions to sit on Legion Drive and count cars that were coming down there. I can't remember a time where I ever saw a license plate other than an Okaloosa County tag. Very few out-of-state tags. People are not, I don't think that they're using this as much to get back on 98 as is being represented. I think people are using this to get to Calhoun, to Seibert, to Stallman, to Ridgewood Manor, to Eastwood, to wherever. I think it's moving locals, people who live on the West End, over to that side. I think it for certain enhances the quality of life of everybody on Mountain Drive and Legion Drive. I've talked to a dozen or more people that live on both of those streets, and they're tired of people running their stop sign on Mountain Drive. They're tired of zipping past their house on Legion Drive. We've been, you know, I got a couple phone calls today about this topic, about this agenda item, and what my dad, Mr. King, was representing was a conversation that I had with him, and assuming that there would be some opposition to this, and it seems like at this point we are just blatantly wasting more money. We're blatantly wasting more of our staff's time. With all due respect, I think that this is a no-brainer. I think we need to quit kicking the can down the road. Previous council member, Mr. Morgan, chimed in. He sent us an email before this talking about how much we need this. I think the time is now. We need to move forward with this. And that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. King. And before, I got Mr. Bagby and myself, and now Mr. Smith and Bobby Wagner that want to make comments. Before we make our comments here on the dais, does anyone have any specific questions for our presenter at this point, so he's not just standing there listening to us bloviate or make points or comments. Okay. Go ahead and ask a question, sir.
I just want to make sure the landscaping plan seemed very robust. Has it been through the environmental committee / tree board or is this just y'all's kind of, your landscape architects, this is what we ought to put there?
Yes, I know the intent is to provide some screening for the residences, who border the parcels. So, some more dense landscaping was the intent for there. In terms of if it's been through, the different city, I'm not sure, Joe, perhaps?
We don't have
Public
an,
projects had to go through the, maybe we changed that, but.
we don't have a tree committee or an environmental committee anymore.
I thought we were going to reestablish that. Who did we send that to? The Recreation Committee?
Yes, the tree committee is still part of the recreation committee.
Yeah,
The environmental
okay.
committee is.
You have to have a tree committee to be a tree city, okay? I haven't written that ordinance, I understand that. So we don't have to send public projects through for their review that have as extensive a landscaping as this?
We will. If you notice that the next phase of their review includes a subdivision and all the other related things that will be reviewed through our codes and will go through the LPA and all the committees that are involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, because it is way over landscape. I understand your thing. I just want to make sure I understand the process and that we're following the process, because I just didn't see how this got to 90% with all that stuff there. Okay, thank you.
All right, my turn. This is almost a cross between watching paint dry and scratching our fingernails on a chalkboard. Nope, it's just up for my turn. So you can, yeah, you can sit down and you may get called back up because there's 4 more people that want to talk. First and foremost, just about the crosstown connector in itself. It's against best practices for any governmental entity not to increase its connectivity whenever possible. Every community in America, when given the chance, should build more roads or better roads. That's point A. The whole purpose of this crosstown connector, in my mind, is not to dump traffic back on 98, because you get off at Stallman, Beach Drive, Benning Drive, Main Street, the Common, Skipper Avenue, you name some I even forgot, because that's where the majority of that traffic goes. And during this whole process 3 years ago, a lady came up here and presented 62 signed petitions of people from Legion and the Mountain Drive stating, homeowners, our constituents stating that, encouraging us to build a crosstown connector to get that traffic out from in front of their houses. Number 2, 250 days a year, that road is our road. When we're not in tourist season, that's Destin's road, and Destin's people use that road every single day. Even in high season for 6 to 8 hours a day, that's our road. Now, when there's a wreck and the weather's bad, people will use it because their little GPSs send them over there. But I use that road every day. And having that crosstown connector is just going to facilitate me staying off of 98 at all cost. And only a few days out of the year and a few hours out of those days does that become a gridlock like everywhere else. But building this crosstown connector makes Destin a better place to live. And it gives our residents and our people a better way to get around town. And if we could build some more roads, which we really don't have any room, I would highly recommend we do that. Lastly, the amount of money we've spent since inception to this point, none of what we've done up to this point is going to get any cheaper if we keep getting in the weeds, asking for this aggregate or this bush or this tree. It's like the little demonstration, it's time to dig and get her done, that's where we're at. And we can we can do things during that process. We can even go back and make changes afterwards. Look at our median on 98. That's been a pain in Mr. Braden's butt for 2.5 years, and now $1 million later, we're fixing to have one of the finest medians, I think, in Okaloosa County. It just takes time. But you never not build a road for any reason, ever. And that's why I think his design needs to go to 100%. We're going to talk about acquiring the rest of these properties. It's time to get her done. It's time. And I'm passionate about it because I've looked at that empty campground for how many years? The taxpayer paid for that money, paid for that property. It's time we put it to good use. And we put it to good use by putting a road there so we can get from point A to point B in our community, in our town. So I sure hope that we stay out of the weeds and this council has the tenacity and the bravery and the will to approve this plan and get her done. Mr. Smith.
Thank you. That was, amen. I agree with Mayor and everything he's saying, and I'll say that first. And Mr. Destin, I do respect your comments, and I have some agreement on some of the things you're saying. That sure, once we build this and once we start using it, I mean, Stallman very well could potentially be a worser than it already is. Not sure if worser is a word, but you get the intent, right? But like Mr. King and Mayor, everybody's saying, I mean, one of the biggest goals I've always heard before we were here was to help alleviate a lot of those houses and family members on Mountain and Legion, the people that are going through. So this is going to do exactly that. And I would love a green park and just spend some more time trying to figure out the drainage and things like that to allow us to have a little bit more green space, because I like green space, but I personally don't think with somebody that has 3 kids of my own that I would choose to go to this area to use it as a green space, even if it was there. The people that live around there, I think they're going to go to the elementary school, play on the playground before they went into this. There's also great benefits with the walking and biking path that I'm going to be able to bike from Airport Road to Mountain Drive and participate in a lot of fun things that I do on Mountain Drive at a lot of establishments, coffees and restaurants and everything else, utilizing this crosstown connector on that amazing path. So I agree with everybody. I do understand that this might create some issues at Stallman, but it's already creating issues at Calhoun by your place and getting on 98. Those issues are already there. Now somebody's just bought that corner property. I can only imagine one day what that's going to create at that turn on 98. So there's all these things that we could have creating issues in the future, but I think the advantages of continuing this process and not delaying any more to build the crosstown connectors far outweighs some of those other issues. So thank you.
Ms. Aber.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, without going over everything, like Kevin, I fully support exactly what the mayor was talking about, and I totally respect where you're coming from, Dewey. We don't really want more problems at Stallman, but this is a very expensive push, and we've spent way too much money, and we're going to continue to spend money, and we need to just get this done and get that road finished through an empty campground and carry our citizens that live on the backside like us home easier, because we're not cutting through neighborhoods and we're on that direct into the backside of town. We just spent too much money, and I just feel like it's the right thing to do. And there's a lot more citizens that have called begging to get this pushed through than I've had people calling saying, no, don't do it. So I fully support this. It's at 90%. We are too far into this, and we're not going to get it any cheaper. So I say we continue on.
Mr. Wagner, and then Mr. Bagby, then Mr. Destin. Go ahead.
For the swell and for what could potentially be a park, what is the zoning of the land that after this project is created, since we don't have it inside this scope, where does the land start as zoning? Is it start as a park, and then we can move it to something else, or like, how does this work outside of this?
The next phase of the review will be determining those aspects. I think probably it's going to be a parkland from a classification standpoint at this point, but we'll go through the review and bring it to council and make sure you agree with it or not.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, that's all I had.
Mr. Bagby, then Mr. Destin.
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. I only came back, I think, 3 times in the 5 years I was off, and one was when y'all were talking about this, a previous council, previous even to the one that I came to. This is the design to get these people off Mountain, get them off Azalea. And I've always supported that. I supported buying the land, and I supported building the road, and I never thought in a million years it'd take 14 years. Hell, it's going to take 20 before we even start construction almost, from when we started talking about this. That's too long, you know. But I also understand my issue with the landscaping is not that just it's over landscaped. It's the cost of that landscaping. When you see what the cost of what's designed here, you're going to be blown away. And it's just, we don't need to spend that money on that. There's other ways you can screen, and we don't need a miniature forest there to do that. I agree with Mr. Destin. You know, I want to see a city of parks, little pocket parks, where you can walk to a park wherever you live in this town. Whether you live in Crystal Beach, whether you live in Holiday Isle, whether you live like we did off of Stallman for 4 years, where you can take your dog or your kids and you can do whatever. You won't be able to do that here because of those swells. And that was the point that I was going to make. If you're going to spend this money for this land, you ought to have some use other than water retention for it. That was my big push. We came up short last time. I respect the decision of the council. But no, we need to move on with this. But that landscaping, somebody needs, I want to see the cost of that landscaping.
Mr. Destin.
Well, you know, I could never criticize democracy in action, and therefore I value everybody's opinions, and it looks like I'm on the wrong side of democracy at the moment. But
we'll find out in just a second.
But I can't help but address a couple of the points made earlier. You know, we're not going to get traffic off Azalea or Legion. They are part of the Crosstown Connector. We are only going to increase traffic on those. As far as building more roads, we need more and more roads. I think if we were talking about building an east-west corridor through Indian Bayou or any of our other nice subdivisions here in our area, we would be having a different discussion altogether right now to alleviate traffic on 98. But I respect everybody's opinions and we'll vote on it. But I was also on the wrong side of democracy when I tried to tell people we needed turning bays at Emerald Grand or we're going to have a big mess. We're still living with that mistake, and that's the bad thing about democracy. Sometimes it makes some really tremendous blunders. We're headed for one of those now, but I will make one more stab at our 90% drawing, and I will make a motion that we go back and we put the drainage underground and not create a pond and have that property available for the linear park.
Is that a substitute motion?
One more time, I'll second that.
I'll second.
And
That's a substitute motion then.
That's right. Well, it would be a modification to the 90-degree plan.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, so where does that take us then? If we were to vote for that and approve that, where does that take us from denying a 90% plan and hopefully to get a 100% plan in September, hopefully?
And not to put you on the hot seat, but give us a timeline.
Take out the digging.
Give us a timeline and the cost in ballpark figures.
I forget the cost from when we kind of discussed this last time. To do a substitute on this would definitely push design back. So we would likely be looking at possibly resubmitting 60% and then moving forward again with 90s.
Because it's a big difference.
It's,
I would love for Mr. Atkins representative and maybe our staff or engineers or, I don't know, is that true or what?
because it is a completely different design, and there are different design elements you do at different phases. So the engineering, the analysis, the calculations, that is done to get to your 60%, and then 60s to 90s is a relatively, smaller effort. You're cleaning up, you're doing quantities, you're preparing your permit applications that are all hinged on the basis of your design. So if you are making a significant change like that, you can't just switch it out at the 90% and, keep your same schedule. It is a significant effort to do that.
Thank you. And I'll add that one of the things that Mr. King, the other Mr. King, said that a couple of us have mentioned about you can't buy land for $300,000. What I heard him mention was $300,000 for the cost of doing an underground retention, plus the increased costs of the additional valuations of these houses that we're about to see. That the last appraisal we did on one of these houses was in the fall of 2021. So even if we redid that one today, it's going to be higher than what it was. So it was the increase of the property values where he then got close to $1 million of going to buy land. So I just wanted to throw that back out there. It's not about buying land for $300,000.
Right, and I would be hesitant to mark $300,000 as the cost for the exfiltration. I would suspect it's significantly higher.
And Mr. King,
Yeah.
hold on, just put your name on the list. See, we got a new motion, a new second, so everybody can go around again. Because I'm going around again. Go ahead, Mr. King.
Yeah, and I would be, I had a feeling that was going to get, brought up. And had we, I think I spoke with my constituents today, and there was discussion at our previous meeting that there would be a $50,000 feasibility study on whether we could do an exfiltration system. I have personally maintained retention ponds in this area that have never held a drop of water. So I don't want to set us back. I don't think that moving forward on those grounds is the best idea. I think that moving forward where we are, if that is the case where it sets us back to 60%, I absolutely couldn't support it. So thanks.
All right, I'm going to go again. This is it's a valiant effort. We have a second motion. I highly recommend that this council votes this second motion down for all the reasons I already stated.
Okay, simple question here, so we can address all these delays we're going to cause. Changing this design on the drainage, would that prevent us from acquiring right-of-way that we're talking about later in this meeting? And
No.
I'll give that as a question to our attorney, I suppose.
You can still acquire the right of way.
So that's not a delay, and that's one that we're kicking about. Okay, our construction price is now $9 million instead of $4.5 million that we don't have in the budget. We have more property to acquire. One of my erstwhile opponents in this debate said earlier, we're still 4 years away from constructing anything. So how in the world can you make the point that this is going to slow it down to the point that will it affect the budget in any manner whatsoever, or the project? Those are all just false flags, and the logic behind them evades me.
The logic that I heard him say was it's going to take more time and more money. I didn't throw any numbers out there at all when I was making my points, Mr. Destin. I was saying it's time to get it done. And you could keep doing this. We could do this next meeting go all the way back to 60%. We kick it back to 30%. This is like the never-ending story. And I think our citizens are tired of the never-ending story. They would like to see the end at the end of the story. So, on this one, we're just going to disagree. And I'm not disparaging your thoughts at all. I'm just telling you what I think. Go ahead. I've been on this, I've been mayor for 4 years and almost 6 months, and we've had all these discussions before. And at one time, it got voted down, and then from about a year and a half in, it's all been moving forward. And now all of a sudden, we get to the 90% plan, which is like that close to the 100% plan. And now we want to kick it back to the 60% plan in another 6 months, 7 months. Hell, you might be off the council by the time the Crosstown Connector gets built at that rate. So I think we've had ad nauseum discussions. They got a hell of a nice plan for a Crosstown Connector. We're trying to buy the property, so yeah, you could say that it hasn't been thought out about the problems, but I think it's been very well thought out and very well vetted, and we're trying to build the best thing, the best road possible to help connectivity in our community. I just don't see all the rationale in the argument. So the good news is we do have your motion on the floor. I got 2 more people that want to talk, so we'll vote on your motion, and if it fails, we'll go back to the original motion, and if it passes, democracy prevails. That's right. Go ahead. Are you good? Go ahead, Cap.
Changing the drainage swale puts us back to 60%, and none of the rest of the stuff that we progressed from 60% to 90 is now applicable because we changed the drainage swale?
All the other design elements would remain the same.
Okay.
So it's really just a...
Thanks for that answer.
Next, Rodney.
Thank you. Seems like it's been, 3 months, we went from 60 to 90%. Is that true? Is that close?
Yes, that sounds about right.
So would it be safe to say that if we took it back to 60, that would we, 3 months from now, we'd be back here at 90%?
Yes,
These
and
changes?
considering the other elements would remain the same, it should be less than that, 2 months.
So we're just talking about 2 months setting us back for this, just one change. I mean, okay.
We gotta go back to 60, we gotta approve 60, right? Would we have to reapprove 60?
No, it's like,
Would we, if,
who wants to be a millionaire?
I don't know, do we have to reapprove 60 if it comes back at 60? Or who,
Yes.
is there a 70, or is there 97.2, or which ones do we have to approve?
Well, if you go back to 60, you have to.
Approve
see what-
60. and then-
Reapprove
and then
60. so they
Wait
can
until
move forward.
90, so, okay. So, I mean, you're certain it could be 2 months? You sure you wanna say that, or?
So you coming back with the exfiltration study, or, which is gonna cost us $50,000 is what we were told. No offense to you, but I've been told by an engineer that that's a pretty easy thing to figure out. Sorry. A somewhat easy thing to figure out, based on calculations. So in order to get back to 60% plan, you got to come up with a whole exfiltration system, and that we agree to. And then we go from 60%, fast forward 2 or 3 months, to try to reapprove for a 90% plan. Is that right?
So I think the process that we would be starting at 60, so we'd basically redo going from 60 to 90s. We would come back for another 90%. So instead of being at 90% today, we'd basically go back to 60%, work back up to 90s.
The plan that's potentially $1 million more than what we have right now, so we're talking about $10 million. I can't. I'm just saying as to what it would cost. I mean, if the cost of everything has gone up, the cost of dirt has gone up, everything's gone up. 3 months ago, we were talking about $500,000. It could be that much. I'm just speculating.
Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want everybody to take a breath for a second, okay? because everybody up here wants this thing done. Everybody up here wants this thing done yesterday. Hell, I wanted it done before I got off the council the first time in 14. I mean, 6 years, we got the property cleared, and I thought for sure, we're 2 years away from cutting the ribbon. I won't get to cut it. My name won't be on the little plaque, but I'll get to be there and say, yes, I was part of that. And now here we are, 8 years after that, and guess what? We're exactly the same spot.
At 90% though?
No.
Were you
no,
at
we're-
90% then?
No, Mayor, and this is my problem with this conversation going on here, is I agree. You know what? We can be at 100% today. You know when that thing's going to get started? When we get that property, which will probably be 4 years from now. And we'll be just as we'll be 4 years more frustrated because we still won't have a crosstown connector. You won't get that property because, and I'll explain to you why when we get to that agenda item. One of the problems I've had in these discussions, the last 3 discussions we've had with you, okay, is, well, I think it might be 300,000, or it might be 50,000, or it might be $1 million, or it might be, and you know what? These are knowable things. They are factually knowable things. You can get an engineer can tell you, okay, you need this big of an exfiltration tube, you need it this long, you need 3 of them. You put them in parallel, and that's how much water they'll hold, and it'll be the exact same thing. Everything here is knowable. Everything we're talking about, the cost of the trees or the landscaping, knowable. The amount to dig the hole, or the amount not to dig the hole, the amount, it's all knowable. But we just sit up here and we guess, and we'll say, well, the price of property, you know, what's happening to the price of property? It's not going up anymore. That it is not going up. I can tell you, there are now 12 houses in my neighborhood, okay, and they've been sitting there. 3 months ago, those houses wouldn't have sat there for 5 days. Now there's 12, and they're sitting there. You go up and down in ECAR, what's number of residential units? Above 2,800. What was it about 4 months ago? It was like 1,200. Why? Because they're sitting there longer. We don't know in the price of this property. These things are knowable. All I'm asking is, how much would it cost to put those exfiltration tubes in?
And
Okay? And I don't want you to guess. I don't want you to say, oh, because really, we only have to go back to 60% on stormwater. Don't have to go back to 60% on landscaping. Don't have to go back to 60% on road design. Yeah. Instead of feeding into those swells, it's going to feed, or it might feed into exfiltration tubes. All knowable. And what we should have done last time is say, come back and tell us, what is the cost to do this? Don't guess. Don't say, well, it might be $500,000. And we didn't. We should have. And so we spent 3 months on going back to 60% on the stormwater. Look at all these plans on this thing, 100 pages. We're just asking for the stormwater. So that, and don't stop guessing. Please, for the love of God, stop guessing. Just say, I don't know. If you don't know, you don't know. That's what engineers do. And then you go figure it out. You do your little calculations, you come back and you tell it. And so I get the emotion on this. Get the emotion out of it, and let's just deal with some facts, and let's make some decisions based upon facts presented to us.
Rodney.
Thank you, Mayor. Why do we have to wait to acquire these other properties? It seems like everything's just on hold until we get these plans approved. And we have to buy the properties, or is that true, or we?
It's the next agenda item. Is that what you're talking about? A lot of the properties are on the next agenda.
So we can go ahead and approve those, and that's not holding anything up, correct? So we're still moving forward on this whole project. We got 11 properties we got to buy? Is that what that is?
9 parcels, yes.
Oh, 9, my bad. But we can still move forward, or I guess we are moving forward with that tonight. Okay, that's all I had, thank you.
Yeah, we have a motion, we have a second. We can always do a substitute, but we're going to have to vote.
Mr. Destin made the substitute, so unless there's another substitute on top of the substitute, we'll vote on Dewey's substitute.
Go ahead, Mr. King. And that, after Mr. King, we're going to vote on one of these motions. I got to figure out which one.
And, Mr. Bagby, I think you're right. The properties made, if current supply and demand and market conditions continue the way that they've been going, the property values are not coming down. If you look at the demand for what we have here and the supply, it's still way below as far as inventory goes. So I understand what you're saying. We have 1,900 single-family homes available. There was 1,200 last month. That's residential. I'm talking about single-family, detached single-family homes. My issue here is not with you. We didn't ask you to get us a price for the exfiltration system because we've already voted it down. We have, if let's say this does take 2 months, great. We're all here sitting together, the same ones of us. What if it takes 4.5 months? We got a whole nother council to deal with, to deal with this. You know what I mean? And that is the problem with this whole thing for the last 18 to 20 years is every 2 years we get new people up here who have to become educated on this, and they ask the same questions just like I did when I first got here. The time is now. Push it forward.
Johnny, I got a question for you. Why are you so passionate on this subject tonight? I'm just curious what happened, because you seem more passionate about this tonight than people that's sitting here that's been here for 18 years working on the same project. And Jim's, he's been wanting it done 14, and for some reason, I'm just curious of what happened that you're so passionate about this project tonight that you want to push it forward.
I was equally this passionate last time we had this discussion. I've driven past this property my entire life. I have friends who grew up in that piece of property. I have close friends who grew up in that neighborhood. It was not a desirable place to live. It is an incredible piece of property to this town. As Destin properties go, it's a huge piece of property that we own. And we have the opportunity to make a road that makes property values around it go up, makes the quality of life go up, makes everything safer, and we're sitting here on our asses doing nothing about it.
Hear, hear. Well, I'm ready to vote too. So without further ado, the substitute motion. Ray, would you read it so everybody is absolutely clear on what the substitute motion was?
Okay, verbatim on Mr. Destin's motion is to go back to the design and put the drainage on the ground and not create a pond.
That's the motion. Vote. Ayes have it, so moved.
See you in a couple months.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Wrap me some new faces up here when you come back.
Good idea. 5-minute break.
Thank you.
All right, before we go any further into our next item of proposed ordinance 10911, it was brought to my attention by staff and our representative with the design company that there needs to be a clarification, just so there's no expectations that aren't needed. Mr. Destin, I don't know if your intent was to use that system to where there be no swale or pond? Is that the intent there? Because would you like to share with us the information you shared with me?
Yes, thank you. So speaking with staff, wanted to clarify that from the last discussion we had our drainage expert come here, and she was describing that the way the system exfiltration would work, there would still be a portion of the pond that would need to remain. So the entirety of that pond B would not be able to be replaced with exfiltration. Depending on the design, as we go through that progress, we'd see exactly what percentage of that could be replaced. But to clarify expectations, it would not be a full replacement of that pond. Okay.
The intent of the motion is to make it possible to use that property for our linear park, which I would think mean that we don't have the pond there, and to bring us back the possibility of how that can be done. Actually, the motion said to have it done. So what are you trying to tell me?
So speaking with staff, they clarified with me. I'm recalling that that was not possible. When we looked at the exfiltration options a few months ago, I was told by our drainage engineers that a wholesale replacement of that pond is not possible. A portion of it is possible.
And can you bring us back an option then?
If that's the wish of council, yes, we can
And
look
I'd
at
also
options.
like a more detailed explanation of why it's not possible. I noticed
Absolutely.
that you're taking a great deal of the stormwater off of another road and putting it over into this pond, which I guess that's beach or something I read as I went through it. If that's the case, then explain to me why we cannot cease to do that and be able to keep the stormwater that's created by that particular project on that particular piece of property and not import stormwater from another road in there.
Absolutely.
And I think you know where the direction of the motion is. Tell us how we can make that project where we can put the linear park in.
The reason I brought this up, Mr. Destin, was to make sure that the prevailing party of that vote doesn't have unreasonable expectations when they cast their vote. To know that there's still going to be a pond. That's not sure how big.
I don't think that's the expectation, Mayor, and we're asking the engineers to come back, and this looks to me like a last gasp effort to try to derail what was just proposed to council.
Can I ask a question? Yep. Thank you. Okay, there's two ponds on this project. All right, so when you say, are you talking the long pond, or are you talking the short pond?
The long pond on the south of the
Okay,
Destin
so
Connector.
I would ask the drainage engineer to show me why you can't take some of the water that you're taking that would be going in there, couldn't go into the short pond. Or the short pond couldn't become a little bit bigger, okay? This is a fluids problem, is all this is. You know, we're taking water, we're moving it from one place to another. You can move it, you can make that small pond bigger, and you can move the water there, and you can have a long linear park. Please, again, talk in facts. I think you understand the intent. Come back, and if it can't be done, tell her to come on up, and we'll play 20 questions, but you can move water. Hell, we could move the water down to the harbor. If that's what we wanted to do, there would be a cost to it. So all we're saying is the long pond, and it doesn't mean it's not a foot deep or down or 2 feet, but it's not a swell. It's actually something that we might put the Destin Little or high school baseball field on. That ain't happening? Okay.
One of the comments from 60% was the available parcel for that small pond on Benning. There is active deep development on that, so we had to shrink the pond in the 60% up to this 90%. So that pond did have to get smaller.
We're buying 9 lots, okay? How much of those 9 lots are you using for that small pond? Just a little bit? All of it?
The lot at, on the corner of Benning, that is for
Just
the
that one?
pond A.
Okay, so that's all I'm saying. This problem is solvable. Maybe. I would bet that it is solvable, but, 'cause I've seen a lot tougher
The
problems
reason I
solved.
wanted this to go on the public record is that with the vote that was taken, I wanted to make sure that the 4 yay votes understood that they can't just be flat level ground. There's going to be a pond there, according to staff and their engineers. And we had
Again-
that discussion during the 60% plan, is why I think that vote went forward to go to the 90.
Again, we don't know that that's a fact. We are guessing. Please stop guessing. You don't know that that's a fact. And that is a fact, that you don't know. He doesn't know, I don't know, we don't know, but we'll have the stormwater person come back and tell us.
Yes.
Yeah. I would like to go back and say that we did not instruct him to go and look for that originally. So I think to be condescending and rude to him is not fair to this gentleman here, which I feel is what you're being, Mr. Bagby. Mr. Smith, Curtis, would you mind giving us as an engineer, you are an engineer, you seem to have lots of comments, or you have lots of knowledge on this subject. Can you give us your assessment of what we're dealing with here?
Under Robert's rules, this issue has been voted on and has been laid to rest. This is improper and in violation of the rules to continue batting this around. And if we need to take a motion to that effect, then we can.
Maybe sit down. Mr. Braden.
I just want to make sure that we get in 2 months, 3 months, whatever it is, that 90% comes back, that we have the stormwater engineer has done what they say. This is how it's got to be. You got to have somewhat of a swell or 90% flat ground and then somewhat of a little swell or something, so we can at that point approve that 90% and move forward. Don't come back in 2 months or 3 months with the stormwater engineer and says, well, we've looked at it for a couple months and we've come up with a way to do it, or we've still standing by, this here is why exactly, from the perk test or whatever it is, this is why you cannot put all of this underground and then start moving forward. If that's the way it's got to be, like you're telling us, then bring that to us, but they better have a rock-solid explanation of why that has to be the way it is, so we can move forward at that time. That's what I would like to see. That's my understanding of the way I approve the motion.
I wish I wasn't so old, my memory was so vague, but I thought we went over all that during the 60% plan presentation, just don't have those documents with us. I can't remember. So anyways, with Mr. Dessa's point of order taken, we've gotten that discussion on the public record, so we'll deal with it at a later date if there's a change of venue at that point. So let's move on to item 4D, the proposed ordinance 109-11. 4C, sorry. Acquisition of properties for the Crosstown Connector. That may never happen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I do that, I would like to ask for clarification from the council, and if it's not appropriate, please tell me. But I'm guessing, and I may be incorrect, but to do what we have asked Atkins to do is going to cost us additional funds, and very well could be above my threshold. So do we want to find out that number and bring it back so that we can approve it? Or it's not a budgeted item, so I'm. That's a great question.
Well, we're not gonna do $470,000 worth of asphalting this year. There's gonna be some money around there somewhere. No, I would assume we need to make a motion to approve additional expenditures, but we don't know how much.
Very good, thank you. Item 4C is acquisitions of properties in relation to the Crosstown Connector. We have representatives hired by Atkins, Miss Marcia Hayes, on the telephone online to help us out with this. We also have Jeff Kozad, our grants manager, who has been leading up this part of the project. Jeff tells me that we do have the funding to cover the cost of these 4 properties, and perhaps, depending on how things go, 1 more property after that. He has indeed asked or submitted application to FDOT for additional funding. We have not received confirmation yet, but we do believe we will receive additional funding from FDOT for acquisitions. So Jeff, I will turn it over to you and Marcia.
Okay, thanks, Lance. Yeah, we have 4 properties on the docket tonight. Once we got the 60% plans, we asked Marcia to go ahead and start negotiating with the homeowners, and that was based on appraisals that were done last fall. Since that time, we have two properties that got additional appraisals done. One of them is on the docket tonight. The other one isn't because we don't have the money for that. But we did have those appraisals done in April, and we saw about a 15% increase in the values from the previous year to this April, to just give you a little bit of a frame of reference. Marcia's online, and she could talk more specifically as to how the negotiations went and how she came to the numbers that we're at here tonight. Marcia, if you wouldn't mind.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff. I was able to I'm sorry, it's back. I was able to successfully negotiate for the parcels for presentation tonight. 3 of those are the townhomes, and 1 is the vacant land at Anna Street and Benning Drive. That particular one, I received an agreement at the second approved appraisal price. The others required a bit more negotiation, plus there are tenants in each of those properties that required move cost and also being able to reestablish them in a home for them to move to. So that would be their rent supplement for the new home, and then also move cost. Each of those 3 townhomes, those are, like I said, tenant occupied properties. And with that, in accordance with the Federal Uniform Act, the landlords are also entitled to relocation benefits to reestablish that income producing property. Most of the time this is not utilized, but they have been afforded that up to $25,000 each for those properties to reestablish as a landlord for another income producing property. And that is to renovate a property, not for purchase of a property. And I will open that up for any questions.
Any questions? Yep, Mr. Schmidt.
Thank you. A few of these properties, Ms. Hayes. Sorry. How does the negotiations go? I think we got some documents from the owner, and he kind of showed us how he came up with his price, what he wanted, which I believe is what we're giving him. And when I look at the appraisals, it's a lot more than what the appraisals are. So how does the negotiations work with somebody when we're giving him exactly what he wants?
Well, on this particular one, this particular owner, he the negotiations basically failed on those just simply because he's been dealing with this for the past 14 to 16 years, and it's been difficult to get to a point of agreement on that. So, I mean, I start with the appraised value, of course, but because these are a voluntary negotiation, these are basically, if the seller wants to sell, then he certainly, they can sell to us. But these people are not necessarily wanting to sell their property. So that's been the issue with this. So we did reach an agreement at the amount that he requested for 2 of the properties, and that is basically the reason why.
So when you say that you've been working on negotiating with the seller, I mean, this is not my expertise, so please apologize, but how are we negotiating with him if we're giving him exactly what he wants? And how will we be negotiating with future sellers if we just let them tell us what we're going to pay?
Well, and I apologize for the way I stated that, but this has been an effort of negotiations for the last 6 months on this round of appraisals in general, because we received the appraisals in August of last year, and then we began negotiations, I believe, in January of this year to acquire these properties. And so, I mean, these have been back and forth negotiations. So when I say that the price that we ended up at may or may not be what he wanted, but that is where we finalized the negotiations for these properties. And I mean, it's always an effort. Each property is negotiated individually. It's not, that we just go out and ask what they want for that they'll sell these for. We go back and forth with the property owners, and to ensure that, we cover all issues that are being put into the negotiations.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Magby.
Thank you, Mayor. Did y'all find the answer to my eminent domain question that we discussed?
Yeah, so I read through the TRIP agreement. It's completely silent as to whether eminent domain, whether those funds can be used in the eminent domain process. Spoke with Jeff. I think he submitted the question to our FDOT representative, but I'm guessing we haven't got an answer yet. The TRIP grants are specifically written in a manner, they're contracts of adhesion, you can't really negotiate them from our side, and a lot of them don't really make sense in the context as we're currently in posture. So it's just impossible to say based on the language of that contract whether FDOT would allow those eminent funds to be used for an eminent domain process.
Okay, I would ask our guy with the most experience that I know of TRIP grants if we've ever done that before. Mr. Wood? No? You don't know? If you don't know, just say you don't know. Okay? I think and I want to be clear. I apologize to you if you thought I was being condescending. I'm not. Engineer, I've educated as an engineer. I've worked my entire adult life around engineers and architects, a lot of PEs. They get paid to solve problems and not say we can't do something. They get paid to figure out how we can do something. I know Mr. Wood also worked around a lot of people that were trained as engineers. And so it's that when I hear engineers say, well, this can't happen, or we just stick to the facts. So I apologize. I didn't mean to be condescending. I just want solutions, alternatives, and that. The reason I asked the question on the eminent domain is pretty much exactly like Kevin's. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, because it may be a little dated, but I believe if we do eminent domain on these properties, we're required to pay 130% of the appraised value. Go ahead.
Not necessarily for these properties. It would be, depending on the type of eminent domain action, a jury would simply select a number typically between the city's appraised value and the property owner's appraised value. There's no threshold requirement, though.
Okay, but if we went that route,
then we would be able to challenge their appraised value, and they would be able to challenge our appraised value. So, which I'm not opposed to that route either. But we seem to be having to spend a lot of money. How do we negotiate over an appraised value? And that's one of the arrows in our quiver is the eminent domain process. Now, until we hear back from FDOT.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but they weren't aware that I had a conversation with somebody at DOT earlier, and there is not a prohibition on using the funds for eminent domain.
Oh, yeah. That's all I wanted to hear.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Kim.
Well, I mean, the eminent domain issue is a tool of leverage for the city, is it not, in discussions?
Potentially.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would just, and I don't know if we need to do a motion or how council would advise us, but I would say we attempt to reopen negotiations and say, look, we've just become aware that this is a possibility for us, if it is a possibility, and say, you know, we don't want to go that route, but we're not going to pay twice an appraised value either. So is that a possibility? I guess I should ask our negotiator or our attorneys.
Anyone want to answer that?
So, I mean, I think that Marcia might be in the best position. She's been involved in the negotiations from the start. Marcia, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. And I will tell you that I negotiate properties and have done so for the past 35 years for the Department of Transportation, who does acquire properties through eminent domain. I'm not sure where the 130% comes from, because I've never heard that in all my years of doing this type work. I mean, it's basically you negotiate the same based on the appraisal that you're presented with, and then you try to reach an agreement that is in the best interest of both the property owner and the condemning authority. But I would also tell you that if it does become an eminent domain project, that you will be paying attorney fees and you'll be paying costs for the appraisal and any other items that the opposing attorney determines is needed for their client. And that, again, is also under the Uniform Act and under FDOT guidelines and policies. So, I mean, certainly it is a quicker means to reaching possession of the property should you decide to go eminent domain. But the negotiations are virtually the same. I mean, they could end up being, 50% higher than appraised value, 100% higher than appraised value, or, it could come in at appraised value that some of them will. But it's just another tool that is utilized to acquire property in, for government entities.
Dewey.
Thank you, Mayor. I've noticed that one of these properties is above the guideline at which, when the asked price is considerably more than the appraised price, it takes an extraordinary vote to buy that. In other words, the last big parcel, which is, I think, what was it, 700,000 or 800,000? That one's going to require an extraordinary vote of the council in order to buy it. My question is, the others, while they are above, do not rise to that level. If we decide to do eminent domain on one parcel, can we not do it on the other parcel? Is that a parcel by parcel decision so that we don't, prejudice ourselves if we decide one is too expensive and do that one? Will it affect? Do we have to do it as a lump, or are they parcel by parcel?
No, you can do it a parcel by parcel decision.
Okay, thanks.
Marcia, maybe you can answer this. Up to this point, you've just, as a representative for the city, have just been doing your fiduciary duty to the city, but acting in good faith in this process. So the city seems more like a willing participant in the purchase of your property and not a mandate or mandatory. Is that one of the reasons why eminent domain usually isn't used, even though we all know it can be?
Well, typically it's not used for local government agencies, and that is for the reason that it's for public use. And I mean, it's your decision as a city council as to how the properties are acquired. So this has always been, since I have been working with the city on this project, as a voluntary acquisition program.
Yeah, and I think unless we run into some roadblocks, that probably needs to continue. It just breeds goodwill in the community. So I'm thankful that that's the approach we've taken. Mr. Wagner, and then Mr. Destin, I see you want to chat.
What, if everything goes to plan, is there an end date in mind from your scope of work?
Well,
Hold on, Marcia, if you don't mind. Right now, the grant ends, I believe, in March of '23, but our funds are going to be expended long before that. We actually have 5 properties right now we have purchase agreements on. We only brought 4 forward because that's all the money we have. So if the council desires to look at some of those other properties that we haven't got purchase agreements on, or maybe the one we do, you could always move forward with the ones you are inclined to, and if there's ones you don't want to move forward with right now, we could consider other ones in the near future.
Awesome, thank you.
Another point I was going to bring up at this point, if we acquire these, we've run through the DOT grant, it appears, almost. And we've still got 4 parcels to go. And so as we push forward on this, we need to figure out where the rest of that money is going to come from and at least have an estimate of what it might be. And as to your comment about voluntary, that's always the better way to acquire these properties. But, you know, according to the letter we have in our file, it was they don't want to sell the property at all. So these prices they're giving us are, I don't want to sell it anyway, but if you pay me this much, I could be persuaded. It's not an ideal situation.
All right. I think we're looking for a motion here, correct? Or no?
So we were looking for motions as to each property so that we just had direction moving
One at a
forward.
time?
One at a time. I'd prefer if it was severed, particularly since that one will require a supermajority vote if you want to enter into the contract.
Sure.
Okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
I'll kick it off, get the ball rolling here. 605 Sandalwood. I move that the city council approve the purchase of 605 Sandalwood and authorize the city manager to execute the purchase agreement and proceed with closing.
Second.
Okay, got a motion second. No further discussion. Let's take a vote. Vote is unanimous, so moved. Go ahead, Kevin, while you're on a roll.
Yeah, keep rolling. I move that the city council approve the purchase of 606 Sandalwood and authorize the city manager to execute the purchase agreement and proceed with closing.
Second.
Got a motion, got a second. Any further discussion? We'll vote. Vote is unanimous.
Anybody
Ayes
else
have it,
wanna
so moved.
Take one? Okay, keep it going. I move that, I'm 2 for 2 so far, so. I move that the city council approve the purchase of 608 Sandalwood and authorize the city manager to execute the purchase agreement and proceed with closing.
Close it second.
Got a motion, got a second. No further discussion. Take a vote. Ayes have it, unanimous, so moved.
I move that the city council approve the purchase of the vacant land at the corner of Anna Street and Benning Drive and authorize the city manager to execute the purchase agreement and proceed with the closing.
This requires a supermajority.
I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Take a vote. Motion fails due to lack of a supermajority.
Wait a minute, why didn't we want to do it?
So we're not going forward with that one? Does that leave us more money? We can do another one? Is that it? Kyle?
Those are the items. I mean, if you want to direct Marcia to continue negotiations on the vacant land, y'all could do that, or take her some other direction. She might appreciate the direction moving forward
Yes,
there.
so I'll entertain a motion to that effect. Dewey, would you like to make that? Go ahead.
Second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second to continue negotiation on the vacant piece of property. Any further discussion? Let's go ahead and take a vote. Ayes have it, so moved. You done? All right.
That's the 4 properties.
Okay. All right. Lance, take it away.
Thanks, sir. Next item, proposed ordinance 109.11, amending the city's personnel rules and regulations. What this would do would be to adopt all federal holidays as holidays that the city of Destin would honor, in addition to the days that are currently on our list, which would include the day after Thanksgiving and Christmas Eve. So the two additions that we currently do not have on our list, federal holidays, are the Juneteenth holiday and the Columbus Day holiday. So those would be the two federal holidays that would be included in our list that currently are not.
I move to direct staff to bring back the proposed ordinance for first reading. Thanks, Lance.
Thank you. Crystal, it might be answer for Crystal, but how does unexpected holidays affect the budget if they're not already planned for on this one, but also in the future if it happens again, like new federal holidays?
Technically, it doesn't affect the budget because we pay, for all of the year, all of the days of the year, whether it's from paid time off, like a holiday or sick leave or whatever it might be, or, actual paid regular time. So it doesn't really affect the budget.
So if you have people working on a holiday, they're getting double paid though?
I'm not the HR specialist, so I'm not going to go into the HR policies. There could be some ramifications related to overtime, but I think they try to schedule people so that they aren't working overtime on the holidays.
Okay. All right. My only thought earlier today about this was that I don't want to be put in a corner to have a blanket federal holiday schedule of all federal holidays. If federal holidays get added in the future, not every government agency follows the federal holiday schedule, ultimately. So I just felt like, why don't we just continue listing out the federal holidays that we're wanting to do, and if there's a new one, we keep adding them as it comes, is my only thought and concern. Just wanted to share.
Got a question. Does this resolution say that we will honor all future holidays or just the ones that are in effect today?
It does. The proposed ordinance states that all federal holidays, as those holidays, may be amended from time to time by the federal government. So if the federal government did change, our personnel code would change along with it.
And could we change this ordinance to say as of this date?
Absolutely.
I'll move a substitute that we substitute that in its place.
I have no problems with that.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I agree that, I don't agree with a handful of the holidays that we're taking now, but, yeah, so I would like to, I'd like to have the vote on, if another holiday comes up, whatever it is, then I'd like to have the say-so whether we're taking it off or not. Thank you.
Ayes have it, so moved.
Thank you, council. And so that will be coming back to you with the correction on first reading, because it is an ordinance. Next item, Auditor Selection Committee, and I'm going to turn this over to Crystal as she is the one heading up this project.
Good evening, council members and mayor. So this evening's item, I was brushing off the audit RFP that I started last fall. If you recall, last summer we agreed to hire EFPR Group to extend their contract one more year beyond, even though their contract had expired, just because we'd had so much turnover in the finance department. So I took out the RFP again recently and double-checked the Florida statutes. Florida statute says that staff are not allowed to use our normal, bid committee. Staff are not allowed to be on the auditor selection committee. So we need to establish an auditor selection committee in accordance with the Florida statute. One member must be a council member. That would be the chair of the committee. And we need a minimum of 3 total people. So we sent out a request for applications last week, and we had 2 members of our, from our committees and our citizens applied to be members. So this evening we need 1 more person to be the chair of the committee. And we've drafted up all of the RFP documents. Job number 1 for this committee would be to confirm the selection criteria that will be in the RFP that we would like to issue on the street. So meeting number 1 is set for next Monday. All of the items are prepared in a committee agenda packet for distribution, and we will send that around as soon as we have 1 council member who's choosing to be the chair of that committee.
Don't y'all jump up and down all at once.
I nominate Jim Bagby.
Second.
I have a motion, I have a second. No further discussion. Ayes have it, so moved. Thank you, sir.
Well, I don't have any extra duties.
You'll be great.
I'll make the motion I move to appoint Jim Wood as a member of the Audit Selection Committee.
Second.
Vote. Ayes have it, so moved.
And I move to appoint Tom Weidenheimer as a
Second.
member of the Audit Selection Committee.
Motion, second, vote.
Hey, Jim.
I need some voting there, Jim. Ayes have it, so moved.
And I will move to appoint Marcy Bell as a member of the Audit Selection Committee.
Second.
So moved. Hurry up, vote before she leaves. Ayes have it, so moved. Thanks, Marcy.
Thank you, Marcy.
You actually only needed 3. Now you have an odd number, so you got a potential deadline. Yeah. If there's anyone here tonight that wants to be a 5th, so we don't have deadlocks.
I think for Kyle, for the purposes of what we're doing for is fine, because it's not going to be a vote of 1 and 1. We actually have a ranking criteria of, this many points for each proposal, and all of the points are tallied up together. So 4 people is just fine.
Good deal. Take it away, sir.
Thank you, sir. Just a few quick announcements. First off, last week, Mr. Zanguzzi presented me with a proposed incorporating the enclaves process, and I wanted to give him an opportunity just to brief council. I know he's going to bring the full item back next month.
Yes, thank you. Currently, we do not have a formal annexation procedure in the city. So my staff and I put together an outline to the city manager of a proposed procedure that the city council could adopt. It covers all the land use aspects of any property or properties that we'll be looking to annex, and also look at services that are required either to be incorporated or to be left alone, depending on what the impact they have on the budget. All that will be outlined in your agenda item for next month, and then we can go over that and hopefully get an adoption, because I think we do have a request on the table that we need to deal with fairly shortly.
Thanks, sir. Appreciate that. Any questions for Louis?
Questions for Louis on that?
Moving on, I just want to remind everybody that on Thursday, July the 14th, that's this Thursday at 5:30 PM in this room, we will have our third and I believe final budget workshop for the year. So please try to mark that on your calendars. And finally, on the 29th of this month, the annual Big Truck Day will be held at the Community Center from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. So if you've never been able to attend, I recommend it, because you'll get to see a whole bunch of kids smiling because they love the Big Truck Day over there. So that's all I have, sir. Thank you.
All righty then. Up next, 5A, first reading of ordinance 2209CN, exclusive solid waste franchise agreement with Waste Management Company of Florida. This is a public hearing. Kyle, take it away.
Thanks, Mayor. This is the first reading of ordinance number 2209CN, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Destin, Florida, providing for the exclusive franchise to Waste Management, Inc. of Florida, a private corporation for the collection and disposal of all residential and commercial trash, garbage, and other refuse within city limits, providing for the collection of residential recyclable materials within the city limits, providing for definitions, grant of franchise, limits of franchise, term, franchise consideration, assignment, bankruptcy or insolvency, default, rate changes, rights of first refusal, restoration, compliance with laws, liability insurance, hold harmless, workers' compensation, performance bond, right to require performance, dispute resolution, operations during dispute, standard of performance, curbside recyclable materials collection and disposal, recycling program, collection services and operations office and collection hours, collection equipment, disposal routes and schedules, grantee personnel, spillage and litter, storms and other emergencies, non-discrimination provisions, rates and charges, rate changes, delinquent accounts, accounting, right to audit, complaints, charges for failure of performance, venue, sovereign immunity, conflicting ordinances and resolutions, savings clause, and providing for an effective date, and this is a public hearing.
And seeing how this is a public hearing, at this point, I'm going to open up for public comment. If anybody would like to come up and make any comments pursuant to this ordinance, please do so at this time.
Marcy Bell, 3 Gulf Breeze Court. So a couple of things about this ordinance. First of all, please, I'm asking you, I'm begging you to make sure that we have language in there that puts the number of the address that the can belongs to visible on the can. We were a pilot program on my street. It's been going on for about 3 years. I don't know why it started. I don't know who made the complaint, but they came out and they put big white numbers, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, and so on. But what was happening, I wasn't a part of it, but I can tell you what was happening is the can that belonged at 32 ended up in front of 14, and 14 was the one who was getting violations for it because it was left in front of their unit and nobody knew that it didn't belong to them. So when you put the number on the can, you know who it belongs to, and guess what? They put their cans away. They take them back to their units. That also, so that's only on my street. Now, what else has been happening? So now what else has been happening on Holiday Isle is they don't want a can in front of their house. So they put their can in front of somebody else's house. So they store it in front of that person's house. A short-term rental property could be an example, or somebody who's a second homeowner who is not there all the time. So as an example, I wouldn't say that you would do this, but you didn't want the can in front of your house. You don't want a garbage can in front of your house. It's a townhouse. So you go down and you put it in front of Kevin's house. So you store it down there, so he's having to house your can just because you don't want it on your property. So my other part of that I would ask that the ordinance also state that when the can is not at the street, you already have language in the ordinance that says that the can be out from noon the day before until midnight the day of pickup. That's already there. So now I'm asking for the can to be at the property where they have an account, where that number is located. It's
So that on Sunday, driving around, there aren't 37 trash cans at the end of Main Street, Planet, Indian Bayou. I got what you're talking.
because if the can has a street address, they know that they'll get pegged for it. It keeps our streets clean. Look, my parents live in Fort Walton. That place is a mess with garbage cans. I just drive down the road like this. So it's nice to have clean streets for that. I don't think there was, oh, recycle cans. Okay, this is gonna really throw you. I think we should really get rid of recycle cans. We should get rid of recycle cans. No, not recycling. Because the people who choose to recycle will take their recycle to a center where they can drop it off. What's happening is the recycle cans are being filled with garbage. I can tell you every day. Every day they're full of garbage. They're not full of recycle. They are full of trash.
Practice may already been dealt with.
So I just wanted to ask you if you guys could please, before you vote this through on a first hearing, first reading on this ordinance, to maybe add those two specifically, the numbers, and have it where they have to have the can on the property where they have the address, so people aren't dumping their cans on somebody else's property. Thank you.
While we have you, come on up, I got a question for you. Yeah. What would that take to do the address on the cans thing? I mean.
That's a Jake question, actually.
So, go ahead, what was the question? Oh. So I did this a couple years ago at her address. The real issue was, I think there's 32 or 34 units, is that correct?
No, 20.
Okay, well, out of 20, there was only 3 people paying on that street, and everybody puts cans out, so our drivers don't know who's cans who. So we put numbers on, and something in the ordinance, I think it's 45 days, the can had to sit there, everything like that. But I get that, but at the end of the day, I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but there was a lawsuit between us and our commercial vehicle damaging the property all the way in the back, so we were unable to turn around on that particular street. So at that point, it was a decision by myself that I'm not going to turn around this property because we were already sued, right? And, we paid the money for the concrete, and the concrete still broke. But either way, so that's one of the reasons why we numbered that, and we gave them specific spots for cans, or where we could put the cans, because there's not any room on that particular street.
I don't see that being an issue in my neighborhood. That's why I was asking. It's okay, Marcy, come on up. We're in the public comment period. Yeah.
So our cans were put on one side of our street because our street is a private road, and 1995, after we redid it after Hurricane Opal, we didn't want the big heavy garbage truck coming down the street, one way, back out, pull in, back out. If we put them all on one side, which is what he's talking about, we only have the truck on the road once. It backs in and it pulls out. That's why all the cans go on the other side. I don't know what he's talking about. I think are you talking about the broken up concrete?
All the way to.
Yeah, that has to do with a private condominium.
Correct.
That has nothing to do with my road. That's a whole different street.
Yeah, the reason I was asking, Marcy, is it almost sounds like your situation's unique and not the way it is in the whole city.
I would agree with you, except for I would say it is not unique because it has happened in houses on Holiday Isle, not just my street, not just townhomes. It has happened, I used to be on fines and violations at Holiday Isle. It happens in houses too.
That's really.
Well, and I think also that, like Jake worked through that solution, specific instances, we could look at that. There's a pretty significant cost involved in that process.
I had a couple more on Durango that I put the numbers, because in some areas it does work.
Yeah,
It does.
The reason I was asking is it just doesn't seem like it ought to be part of our ordinance when we're talking about something that you can work with your customer to solve their particular issue.
And believe it or not, vinyl decals have become very expensive, and that's no lie.
Yeah.
Getting the correct, that can deal with this.
Apparently green trash cans are too, because I need one. I got a big crack in mine, and I've been using that piece of crap for 6 months. Y'all ain't giving me a new one yet.
All you gotta do is call.
You call them and they come.
I just thought maybe put it on the public record, put a little pressure on these guys.
Do not replace his, make him call like the rest of the citizens. I called about mine.
You can go ahead and shut the speaker off. Is there anyone else that would like to make a comment, public comment, besides the mayor? I've already made mine. Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment portion. I'll entertain a motion at
I'll
this
move
time.
to approve ordinance 2209 CN on first reading and direct staff to reschedule it for second reading on August 1st, 2022.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Mr. Braden.
Thank you. Doug, can you explain to our citizens, because I've been getting a lot of phone calls, they're mad about the fine they'll have to pay when the trash can is too full, or the contaminant of the recycle.
Right, so this is, and, oh, yeah, actually, he does know that.
Is that
yeah.
the overage part?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the overage part comes into play, residents, we normally don't have that, we used to never have the problem back in 17 when this, prior contract. But with COVID, a lot of homeowners staying at home, working hybrid, stuff like that, even like Uber Eats, everything you talk about that. You used to go to the restaurant, you used to go to Whataburger, you'd eat inside, you'd throw your garbage out in Whataburger. Now it comes inside the little 96 gallon. Or you might go to your restaurant and you still have to make the food like you did before, you have the same garbage, but now you put in the styrofoam, where's the styrofoam go? Back in your home garbage. So we're seeing a lot more garbage. We used to run like 30, 35 pounds, per home. And now we're almost 70 pounds per home, and that's average, so we're seeing a lot more garbage. And what that means is the garbage is keeping above the lid. And this is very, we're probably about 8% that would be affected by this. And I imagine out of that 8%, it's probably most of it's vacation rentals because they don't have the correct amount of cans. I think you put this into play. We kind of talked about some schedules as far as, you're not going to get fined right away. You see what I'm saying? But for those houses that sleep 20, and my guy goes there and he's like, there's only 2 cans out here, and there's 6 cars out here, and he's spending 15 minutes throwing the trash and redumping it, so it looks good. At the end of the day, that's what the fine's there for, as far as overage.
That's, and for overage and for contamination also, we've made a few exceptions, to add some education components to that. So instead of, getting a violation the first or the second time, you get noticed with a photo image of what you contaminated or what your overage is. You can't do it. Here's what you can put in your can, and here's what an overage is as a definition. Starting on the third violation is when the fines can start. So we expect to have some learning. It's not just come drop the hammer and say the ordinance is passed and this is going to happen. Like Jake mentioned, the percentage is relatively low, especially on residential. We changed the fine amounts too, as opposed to percentages. We evened that out, made it a little more palatable. To Mr. Destin's point, we don't want to discourage people from recycling or throwing their garbage away the right way. Or in their can, we want them to do it the right way. So that's where that came from.
Thanks. My thought on that is the short-term rental guy that sleeps 30 people or whatever, he's got 2 cans out there and they just got garbage everywhere. I don't have any sympathy for him. So why is it not an option to, like you do the yard waste? You go by there and it's overfull, you tag it, and we're not picking it up, it's too much, too big or whatever, and then you don't pick it up, and then the city, they get a fine from the city as well for the garbage still being there, not being picked up, or because it's supposed to be picked up on a Saturday or whatever, or the fine, you said you went down on the fine. If it's 8% as the short-term rentals, I'd be tickled to death to increase the fine as much as you can on them, if that's where your problem's at. But I just didn't want the somebody in my neighborhood to get, because what I've been told is, if all of a sudden we have a big birthday party or something and my cans are full and I get charged for it, well, do I get a credit for the next week when I don't even put it out there? So I'm just curious if that was an option or not.
Well, yeah, and I think we don't want to leave any garbage on the ground, because there's been some rodent issues, in some of the nicer neighborhoods with the 30 people and we try and help the homeowner out with that. So that would just compound some of those problems. But like you said, you have a mulligan, so to speak, on sometimes. So if you get birthday parties, stuff like that, then that'll take care of that.
I just hate the fact that we as a council have been talking about this for years, the short-term rentals, the music, the cars, parking in the right-of-way, the trash. Here we are now rewriting an ordinance or the contract, and the whole city's got to pay the price on it for the same thing we've been talking about for years, the three issues we've all had with the short-term rentals.
Yeah. I just, on top of your comment, Rodney, I know I'm next, I think, at some point, but
I'll yield the floor.
I'll let you continue, but I have more things to talk about, but it's nice to pick up the trash in the nice neighborhoods. But it's just like my children, or when I was a teacher, you continue doing things for people and doing things, and they're not doing it the right way, they're never going to do it the right way. And it's going to take, eventually, you don't pick the trash up, then the HOA gets pissed off, and they call the city, I guess, and our code guy goes out there, and then they call the homeowner, and then they call the rental company, and eventually, they'll start fixing their problem, I guess. But if y'all keep on being nice and just picking it up, then that's never going to change. But
Should they have 4 cans if they've got a house that holds 30?
Yeah, there is an ordinance to it, and the minute this happens, our driver calls dispatch, and our dispatcher, the route manager, enters a case, and we work closely with code on this. And trust me, they're normally out that day, code enforcement. You guys have the best code enforcement. No, seriously. So, but like I said, we email or call, and they're out, and they'll call me, and they'll say, hey, what about this address, anything like that, and we work through the problem. But unfortunately, month to month, it can change.
And this ordinance, or the language in this ordinance now gives us and you the ability to force that level of service that's needed. So if it's a problem, a real problem that's persistent, we can push them to that point.
It has been a problem, that's what I'm saying. This council has been talking about it since you were here at the city, of their trash, and I can tell you for a fact that if I have my trash can out in front of my house and there's a bag of trash beside it, I can tell you for certain that driver is not getting out of that truck and putting that bag in my garbage can, or dumping my can and getting out and putting that bag in the can and dumping it. So why is he offering that service to a short-term rental property? He ain't doing it on mine, I can tell you. I've seen it time and time again. He won't do it. So why are they getting that service and I'm not?
So all I can say is it really depends on the driver. My driver does not know what section is where, because to be honest with you, I have some of my staff that lives right in Destin, and they actually live in all corners of Destin. You know what I mean? So it's not like they say, oh, we're serving this because of this. It's, I hate to admit it, you probably have a better driver on Crystal Beach than where's in front of you. I mean, it's the truth, though.
When I have people calling me on the phone saying, well, I had a bag of trash and he didn't pick it up, but I went down to work in Crystal Beach and there was 8 bags by a trash can and I witnessed got to pick it up, they're pissed. So I'm just asking, so when somebody calls me,
But, at the same token, we get, if someone calls, it doesn't matter where it's at. No matter where they call, we will treat them the same. You see what I'm saying? Now, if you do call and you say, hey, I have 8 bags out here, yeah, I'll probably send the driver out. But at that point, they'll say, hey, look at this Taj Mahal. There was only 2 cans here. And then right away, code enforcement, we get involved. And then they really do fix the problem almost immediately. Code enforcement, I mean.
But
I get that, but it's just it's all over the place, you know what I'm saying?
So again, hopefully the language in the ordinance will will stop all of that. Whether it's residential in whatever part of the town or a Taj Mahal like Jake mentioned. Now there's language that should put an end to that. That's the goal.
And I'm glad you mentioned the fact that we made a motion to accept this ordinance, and that language is in the ordinance, because that's what our discussion needs to be directed towards. Is you've all had an opportunity to read the ordinance. If you have a concern of something that's not in it that we need to direct staff to go back before we see the second, we can do that. And related to that comment, Rodney, is there anything that you specifically saw or did not see in the ordinance that you would want staff to direct, or you were just using this opportunity as a time to kind of ask the questions and make the statement? We did make the motion. Right. But no change, no direction to anybody right now as far as the ordinance is concerned? Okay. And you can have another crack at it if something comes up with the other discussions. Up next is Mr. Destin.
Thank you, sir. And I understand completely the contamination problem and the overage problem. However, I'm a little uncomfortable with the language that's in there, because I'm not sure how we arrived at the $10, if that's per pickup of the fine that we might impose later on. And how did we come up with that figure? In the ordinance, it says that was arrived at by trying to derive the cost of what it took for you to separate it. But how do we pick it up once or twice a week, the recyclables?
Once.
Okay, so theoretically, that could be $40 a month or $180 a year if you were
Per
a
instance.
complete repeat offender.
Correct.
Which is getting very close to what you pay for the entire service. So I'm not sure I see a nexus between what it costs you to separate it and what the fine may be. Do you have any figures on that?
No, I don't, and those numbers came to us from our corporate office, and we actually made changes to those numbers. If you remember, it was 50% and 25. For the sake of having to do math and figure that out every time, we came down and decided on 10 and 5, just as some type of punishment, if you would, for doing it wrong.
And understanding on the overage, we pick those up how many times a week? Residential?
Twice.
3. So that theoretically could be $15 a week. $60.
Twice a week, I'm sorry.
Well,
It's twice a week.
I guess if you were over on your recycling, the same thing, yeah.
Yeah. And so potentially those two have the ability to more than double what you're paying to have your garbage picked up, should you be a repeat offender who just pays it. I got a problem with that, and that there's no nexus between the charges. So, I can propose some language that would, Of course they do. That leaves them how many more weeks out of the year? And what I'm pointing out is, as we negotiate a price for the residents of Destin to have their garbage picked up, we may well be negotiating a price that could be 3 times as much if this is left open-ended, which it is. And I know that they're not out to try to do that, but if we put it in a contract that's good for 5 years, contract's a contract. And so we may have some limiting language, and I'm gonna, rather than put my language in there and put you guys over a barrel, I'm gonna suggest that you work with the staff to see if we can figure out some way to make there's some kind of logical nexus between those charges and what it actually costs you to do it.
So I can speak to the charges as far as contamination. So currently, it's 45 a ton. If it's contaminated, I pay additional 55 on top of that. So corporate wanted a 20, it was a 25%?
50 for contamination.
Okay, so 50. So, again, I'm not going to do the math, but I know that $10 does not cover me for a contamination fee.
And we're trying to discourage people from doing it, and I get that, but I would encourage you all to talk to see if we can come up with some kind of a limit. Otherwise, while your pickup fee is reasonable and it's better than most of the rest of the county, and I acknowledge that. This potentially could make it dramatically higher if we get to the point of charging everybody that's doing it. And so, you know, I've got several different languages here, but I want to let you talk to them, you know, such as one that says it shall not exceed the actual value, which is going to be very, very hard for you to compute and calculate, which basically that language would just queer the whole thing for you, which I don't want to do. So let's figure out some way that we can put some kind of a reasonable cap on this so that we don't end up paying twice as much rather than a reasonable increase, which you deserve.
All right, on your, in the ordinance, you know, it talks about the pickup. What is the schedule for like, is it like large items that are left on the side of the street? I mean, is it called bulk? Is that a certain day of the week? Is that part of your pickup? Monday. On the Monday
So
when
that's
the regular
Monday.
trash is out?
That's Monday. Then white goods, which is, you know, fridges and stuff, that has to be called in
Okay.
by the
But if it's
homeowner.
like
and
broken
that's
chairs
Sunday.
and stuff, do they have to call that in?
No.
Okay.
I
So
don't-
on Mondays, but if their trash can is this here and their extra stuff is over here, they don't get it all, is that correct? That was questions that I got called on. They've got stuff that's been out 2 weeks in front of their house.
Yeah, so if there is stuff
Bulk.
that's still sitting out and the driver missed it, then we put in a missed pickup.
Got it.
You know, a lot of times, and we want that customer to call us, because a lot of times we find out that they didn't pay their bill.
Oh, okay.
So it's a
Got it.
good opportunity for us, hey, that we might have a wrong number, wrong email, and it's like, hey, you haven't paid your bill since.
Gotcha.
You know, I worked with the mayor on this one off of Bambi, and they didn't pay their bill for 2 years, you know, and it was one of those issues that.
Okay, and same with the yard
We
waste.
look bad, but it's one of those things,
Right.
sometimes it's not always us.
And then the Friday morning is when you pick up grass?
Friday's yard waste, correct.
Okay, and if you don't pick that up, is that the guys just missed it, or they were off because it was 4th of July week?
Well, it could be either if it's out of specs, you know, specifications, or, you know, again, if they miss that, I need to know.
Okay.
You know, because I either have to coach my driver or fix the problem or get paid for the
I'll
service.
talk to you about it after the meeting.
Okay.
Usually they get those people on.
Mr. Bagby.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'm the only one up here who I'm perfectly happy with this contract.
Me too.
Okay? So I'm just gonna tell you, yeah, it's a training thing, and I understand where you're coming from with the fines for contamination and overage, but it's a training thing, and people learn. They will, you know, I think I discussed last time. No, you want to come see a traffic chaos? Come to my neighborhood on checkout day on Saturday when those cans are overflowing and they're out in front of the houses, and you're like, Saturday's not pickup day, and there's 8 bags, and if you got a neighbor that's got 8 bags around sitting on the ground, they need to get another can. Okay, I'm just saying, maybe one time, they get 3 strikes, they get 3 warnings or whatever, but if that's a weekly occurrence, they don't have enough cans, because I know I have some short-term rentals by me that don't have enough cans. We had the stickers. When we first went with y'all, every can had a sticker with the address, and then we had little quarterly stickers that said we had paid our quarterly amount, and it looked like those Walton County beach parking driving stickers. And then when the city mandated, probably at Mr. Destin's request, that everybody have it, then we didn't have to get the stickers anymore, because you were paying anyway, whether you got a sticker or whatever. Everybody got a can, and we paid. So, you know, I would say take it off or put it on one side, make them, they can figure out what's best for them, but there is a solution. And if you need to print some more address stickers, fine, do that. I'm happy with the price. I'm happy with what staff's negotiated. Contamination, I get it, because I see people, as Marcy said, you know, they put trash in the recycling. Well, good. 90% of those are probably short-term rentals, maybe not, but the people that live there, they'll learn. After the third time they get, a warning, they'll learn. The short-term rentals will never learn, and those owners are making plenty of money in those houses, and they can pay that fine every week.
I agree.
Okay?
I agree.
$10. This is just my personal opinion. So I'm happy with it. I may be the only one.
Nope, I'm with you.
Yep, let's continue on, try to stay on point, talk about the ordinance. Mr. Schmidt, then Mr. Wagner, and then hopefully we'll wrap up with Mr. Destin, but we haven't been all the way through twice, so we do have that flexibility. Go ahead, Mr. Schmidt.
Right. I think all the discussion so far has been about waste management, which is the ordinance.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, but no changes yet.
What happens with the contamination when somebody contaminates the can and then goes into your truck? Didn't I hear you say last time that now the entire truck is compromised?
No, so the city of Destin, since Hurricane Sally, we've taken to IREP, which is actually a dirty MRF, meaning it goes into the conveyor, everything, and then they sort it out. So at that point, no, you do not lose the entire load. Prior to Hurricane Sally, when it went to ECUA, if they rejected the load, the whole load went
So
away.
now it's going to IREP.
Correct.
And
That's
they're
in
sorting
Montgomery.
it.
That's
So
correct.
if a citizen, if somebody, a customer contaminates their can, which contaminates your truck, the entire load's not going to be an issue.
Correct, but
So where's the extra cost on contamination?
because I get charged $55 more a ton.
So when it gets to IREP, they're
Yeah,
sorting
when I
it,
get,
but
when,
they
you're
start
right,
calculating
like, I pay the gate fee of 45.
Okay.
And then at the end, I mean, everything is robotic now, so they know, hey, you put 20 tons in the beginning, and I got 18 tons on this side and 2 recycle. Here's your bill, Jake. And
Gotcha.
I say, okay,
So what is I couldn't find it, the bulk on Monday? Is there what can be bulk? And I guess ultimately my question is, if I got a lot of trash, it's coming on Tuesday, can I not put half of it out on Monday, you're gonna pick it up?
No, so bulk waste is defined as far as that goes, and
Like if I put my patio table out there and I put some trash bags on it. Thank you. Of material, right?
And it's, and
chair and a mat, like
it's defined as large items of solid waste such as mattresses and other oversized wastes whose large size precludes or complicates their handling by normal solid waste
Where are you reading
collection.
that?
It's the first definition, section 1,
What page is that?
2.
Oh, at the end of the agreement?
It's the beginning.
The very beginning in the definitions. And then what Jim read is the actual bulky waste collection procedure that incorporates that definition.
Correct.
Right, so if I have a large box because my child's present was huge, that oversized waste whose large size precludes or complicates the handling by normal solid waste collection, normal solid waste collection's on Tuesday, so theoretically, by definition, I could put that styrofoam box or the cardboard box or any type of large item out on Monday and you should be picking it up, right? I mean, not just mattresses, theoretically.
If it's large and you pay your bill, then you picking it up.
Well, I mean, you laugh, but it's not what some people were just saying, so. I mean, I have a lot of issues, right, I do have a lot of issues personally too, that's right. That's fine, thank you, it's okay. No, I'll agree with that one. I've stated before that I have issues with where we are today with Waste Management being the only business that was able to provide a bid. I think we're nickel and diming the customers for fees and additional fees. We're increasing the pickup charge already. Now we're going to throw additional fees on there for contamination, for overage. And I think, is it Jake? Jake, you mentioned a minute ago about it's the drivers, depends on the driver sometimes about the 8 bags. Like you're admitting that your own drivers are subjective to what they're going to pick up, what they're not going to pick up, what extra work they're going to do, what extra work they're not going to do. It's just, I think that's unfair across the board. You either do it or you don't do it, is my thought about it.
So I'd have to read through this, but there is a, language on there that anything outside the cart shall not be removed by the
Right.
contractor. So,
But they are sometimes,
yes, some are going over and beyond.
which is nice.
Yes,
And I agree with that.
I
But that's
understand
my
this.
issue, though, is that they're doing it for some and not others. But now we're going to do another fee for people that go over, whether it's every can that Mr. Destin says, or whether it's 5 times a year. I should never be charged an overage fee because the percentage-wise, it's just, I'm already paying for you to pick up my trash twice a week. And now you're increasing the fee to pick up my trash twice a week. And we, as the city, are increasing the franchise fee to pick up our trash twice a week. But now we're going to have an overage charge for $10 and $5, just in case I'm 12 inches now. And you have cameras. What's the process of determining overages and contaminations, please? Is it camera on the ground, camera in the air, and camera after it pours out? Is that what you said?
So no, the smart truck does have 3 cameras to take a video and 2 still shots of the can being dumped. So it does show the inside of the contents. And if you sign up on your account on the WM.com,
Right.
you can
You can
actually
see
go into your account and there's a little blue hyperlink that you can see your can being dumped.
And that's every truck, every smart truck? Is it
Yes.
a smart truck?
Yeah.
Gotcha. So, and that's good to hear. So every can that they're collecting, not just overage ones, they're taking those pictures.
Correct, yes.
Gotcha. And then where in the contract does it say that the first 2 notices are going to be just warnings? And the third one, you're going to start being charged?
So in the overage, let me find the section number, sorry.
So how would they know it's my can?
Section 20,
That I'm,
page 15, if it'd be better. Number 11, overages. The middle of that paragraph. First and second violation shall result in a violation notice and no overage charge.
Gotcha.
Grantee, that's us, shall provide to the customer a photograph or video of available, if available, and the contract definition of an overage. Third, subsequent violations, grantee shall provide the customer with a video or photograph, and charges may be set forth thereafter.
Perfect. Thank you. So then that means on the first or second, I'm going to get a violation, probably in my bill or somewhere.
Yes.
Or not in my bill, because bills
No,
are quarterly
you will
ultimately.
you will be communicated with directly.
Like directly.
Hopefully you have an email address, which is
Right.
the best way to get it, but yes, you'll be communicated with directly.
That's how they're going to notice
And
it.
contamination has the exact same language.
Right.
Well, similar language, but for contamination.
Okay, so they're going to notify me. Okay. Let's see here. I mean, I'm all about recycling as well, but the idea that Miss Bell had about recycling bins, or not having recycling, I guess, have we ever thought about, maybe it used to be this way, you had to request recycling and you only paid it if you wanted it? Is that what we used to do back in the day? Or, like, are more people contaminating recycling today, or are more people using recycling, you think?
No, a lot more people are using recycling correctly.
But like,
I know-
I
I
put
know
a
it
plastic
doesn't-
bag in it every time, so I'm contaminating it just in my plastic bag.
You are, but again, your full 96-gallon can that you have, I mean, I don't want to admit it, but you put one Walmart bag in, they're still going to recycle everything in there. The Walmart bag's obviously going to get picked up by the shredder, but the rest of it's going to be recycled.
Gotcha. Okay. And then, next question is, we talk about the education of the customers. And I heard last time, previous times, you're going to work with us to educate the customers, but where is it specifically saying how we're going to educate them, and that it's y'all going to be responsible for educating them, not the city of Destin?
Well, it doesn't say that in the contract, but I'm telling you that we'll work with your team to do that because it's our job to do that. And
Right.
you have a direct contact with your residents through many channels, and we have a direct contact with them as a customer, so.
So
that's
don't you
what
think it should specify how you're going to notify your customers of all these changes? Like me personally, like as a business person, I do a lot of contracts. I've been screwed over because it's not in the contract. I'm not saying you're going to screw us over, but if it's not in the contract, you don't have to do it. ultimately, right? So why can't we
so-
just put in the contract how you're going to work with us?
So this is unique because it's new and it hasn't been done like this before. I don't have language that we could draft tonight to say that. I'm not saying that that's not doable, but to go down
Not
that
normal.
road, I don't know how we could cherry pick just from one.
Right.
I think that the length of public education is kind of infinite. And if you need that language in here, we could possibly
Sure.
look at that.
Well, me personally, I just feel like it's easy to say we're going to work with the PIO and put it on Facebook. Like, I think that's just too simple of a, a thing to just say that we're going to work with our social media person to put it out there. I would rather see tangible stuff, that we're going to be mailing out stuff into the mailboxes, that you're going to be receiving the emails, that you're going to email me with notice of violations, and just things like that, because ultimately, my constituents are going to call me and complain about, which they already have been, about these changes. So they're going to call me as the city councilman about all these changes. Y'all didn't tell me. Well, I think it's Waste Management's responsibility to tell, because they're the customer. But I personally would like to make a substitute motion, and I'd like to make a substitute motion to remove the contamination fees, the overage fees, and to put language in the contract of how they're going to notify customers of the changes.
I have a substitute motion. Do I have a second?
It's all good.
Motion dies for lack of a second.
Please, add on to it.
If we may?
And can I go down my
Yes, sir,
list?
go right ahead. I'll do it.
Okay, because we're still on the original motion. That motion failed on lack of a second. Mr. Wagner and then Mr. Destin, you can interject. Go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Wagner.
I'll take it to the opposite train. If 8% is the problem child of the overcharges, and I feel to the boast of our constituents that are here long-term, that $10 is simple and is, fixable over time via just $10 fees are more annoying than anything. For those who don't live here and it is a timeshare rental and it is just a cost of doing business, is there other language that we would be open to? Are you guys open to then put more of a hammer on that 8% that is the problem child, that most likely is a short-term rental that isn't dealing with the problem? Is there some kind of exponential gap that we could grow the fine for those who are really not caring about the small goodness that we're doing there? I think that's where I'm at, is if it's 8% is mainly short-term rentals, then how can we bring a bigger hammer over time? Because they're not here locally to deal with it.
On that thought, Bobby, of course, our LDC is being rewritten, and they call that, abatements. In other words, if somebody's going to be profusely non-compliant with their trash pickup, and their yards look like some of the yards that we're dealing with right now, that falls under code enforcement. That's a whole different ball of wax outside of what these guys are doing in the contract that we're writing.
For sure, but I'm worried more about contamination and from the recycling and for the overness of it all.
Marcy, could you please take a seat? Well, at least be quiet, okay? Until we're done with this discussion with these guys. This is a public hearing. We've already had the public comment portion. You have an opportunity at the end of the meeting to make any other comments. Please sit down. Okay, please be quiet then. Go ahead.
Have you guys ever considered that as far as for that 8%, that is the delinquency?
Not yet. I mean, this is, like I said, this is very new,
First draft.
very new language.
Okay.
Our feedback is, on this specific piece was mostly from discussion at the meeting the other night, a little bit from staff about how to make this more palatable. I mean, we would take suggestions, but again, Jake and I standing here couldn't make that decision.
No,
based
for sure.
on-
Cool. Then I guess in general, I'm for how everything's written as is. I think that would just be my critique, would be to find a bigger hammer for those that are constantly out of it. And if we have things through abatement and other things, then I think that's fine, since you guys have such a good relationship with code enforcement. Other than that, I think it really turns into 96 gallons twice a week is a lot. Maybe look inward if you're having that much trash. Self-responsibility could also be self-reduction. So that's my thoughts on that.
Mr. Destin.
Thank you. As Mr. Bagby said, this whole issue of the contamination and the overages, we're attempting to train people. What worries me is that we're training with a 5-year contract. I think it would be more appropriate, and we certainly can put into this contract that the overage and the contamination charges shall be renegotiated after 2 years. At that point, we will have a nexus, we will have numbers to understand, and if we're catching the kind of mortal hell we probably will catch from our constituents, then we have an opportunity to go back and fix it, and it gives Waste Management an opportunity to show us what the problem is and how we're making progress toward solving it. So that's one change that that we can make either tonight as a substitute, or we can make when we do second reading, which would put it all back to first reading, I suppose.
So some of these changes I'm hearing, I don't believe are significant enough to require it to go back to first reading. If the council would prefer it to come back to first reading, we've got till October 1st, really, until this needs to pass. So I'd be comfortable bringing it back to first reading if that's
Right.
how y'all want to keep
And of course,
negotiating.
we'd also, if we do it tonight, we'll give Waste Management an option to come tell us, yeah, we can work with that, or y'all put it out to bid, which is where we're at. So I will make that as a substitute motion, that the overage and the contamination sections of this ordinance be subject to renegotiation at the 2-year period.
Got a motion, got a second?
Just real quick, Dewey, is part of the motion to bring it back to first reading or second reading? Because I don't think that would require.
I think if we do it at this first reading, I'm hoping that will address at least my concerns. So we'll be at second reading on the next one?
Yeah, I think we can go to
And I
second reading. I don't
agree,
think it's a significant
I made the
change.
motion, I agree to add that in 2 years for it.
So we're just going to amend the original motion to Dewey's, and then Dewey was the second on that, so.
That's a good way to do it.
Okay.
The other points I would make is, and with all due respect of Waste Management, I see that on the administrative fines that we would administer them for not doing the things they're supposed to do, they have a right of appeal. There are no right of appeals for the overage and the contamination. Just another small point, but I think a 2-year window so we can look at it. You know, we're not trying to dramatically up the charge that our people are going to pay, but they are trying to address a legitimate problem. So I think that'd be a good compromise, and we will vote on it with that section in there.
We will in one moment, because Mr. Bagby's name was up there, so go ahead, Mr. Bagby.
Are you guys amenable to that? I mean, it sounds reasonable to me.
I think so. I don't know that I can say that today, but I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
We'll have to look at that.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that go into that number. I mean, you know, because like you said, even with the increases, you know, a good number out there is 59% of this number goes to the landfill. So just to know, you know, the increased cost is not Jake and Forwell under my team,
No, no.
unfortunately.
But he's
yeah,
not
but
changing anything
No,
for 2
I
years.
get that, but
Yeah.
this other piece, I had, you know, it has some of the noise and number in there, so we have to look at that.
What other piece?
The charges for contamination or overages.
You get to charge those. For the first 2 years, you get to charge those, and then we can, yeah,
Oh, I apologize, I misunderstood what you said.
okay.
And I understand that. I just standing here, I can't say that, yes, but that
Okay.
seems reasonable. We'll have that discussion, yeah.
And of course, the alternative is just make the entire franchise for 2 years, if that's what you want to do.
Your question or your comment was contamination at just both of those pieces, correct? All right.
That's the only change I would.
All right, so we have a substitute motion, and that was agreed to by the second, so let's take a vote.
Just real quick, I
Mr.
think
Mayor?
it's an original
Oh, oh, oh.
motion.
What?
It was the original motion was amended by the.
Okay, the
maker of
original-
motion. Ray, was that your question, Ray?
Amended, so it wasn't a substitute. It was an amended motion.
I allowed
stand
Dewey to
corrected.
amend mine.
The motion is to approve ordinance 22-09-CN on first reading and direct staff to schedule it for second reading. And then for the overage and contamination to be renegotiated after 2 years.
That sounds good. Thank you. You were second it. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and take this to a vote. Thank you very much. The vote is unanimous, so moved. Clear, Ray, I hit the button one time too many. Set me back up. Hopefully we're, all right, thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Braden.
Thank you, Mayor. Under my discussion, wanted to talk about the signage from Airport Road to Marler Bridge. Can you want to look at those photos, please? I've taken a few. Some of them are hard to see. We got banners, we got feathered flags all over the place. I think this is just, is there more? Because I know there's a lot more than what is here. Is this all we have? Okay, yeah, because there's quite a bit more, but there's one that's missing. It's one of the big signs. I just lost it. The large ones that you see on the highway, billboards. There's one of those that's been tore up.
By Waffle House.
Yeah, by
Yeah.
Waffle House. Been there for months and months and months. It's been, I don't know how long, it may have been for a couple of years. And I just can't believe we can't do anything about that. And then the second picture on in the very center up there, I mean, that shows maybe half of what is sitting there every day out by the road. I mean, it's horrible. So.
That's right before Land Shark tracked on the street.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy when you drive down there and look at all these signs and banners and stuff that's illegal. So I don't know. I've been talking to staff for going on 3 months now about this. So I'm asking council's help. Does this not bother y'all that all this is being neglected?
Do we not have any kind of sign ordinance or anything that
Yeah,
just?
we do, but if nobody complains, then it doesn't get fixed. So does that mean the city just goes to hell if nobody complains and code enforcement just rides around and collects a check? If nobody's complaining. So like I say, I've been dealing with staff for almost 3 months on it, and it still looks like that today. So is there anything the council can come up with as far as what we can do to?
Well, can't they do like they do with our signs after an election? If you don't pick them up, they just take them and throw them in the back of their truck and then they trash them?
Well, a lot of these are in the right of way. Most of them are on private property.
Are they in a sign, or is there anything that states that you can't have those? I mean, I thought there
You're
were
not allowed
none.
those flags. I know that's in the sign
The feathered
ordinance.
flag, yeah, there's,
I mean, none of this is.
Lance, you want to, is code enforcement getting calls on this? And what's the status on something like what he's showing? I mean, it's kind of apparent.
And there's the pictures. I mean, I can't dispute that. I don't know when they were taken or if that still exists. I can tell you that our code enforcement officers are patrolling that when they have the time, when they're not responding to other complaints, that they're patrolling it and picking up the snipe signs, that's the election type signs, and they're warning folks about the feathers. That's an ordinance that we have, and some of the I call them cigarette signs. I don't know what they call them anymore, but that's the triangular shaped signs that you usually put out front of a building. I do have a code officer here if you want. He can speak to it. I mean, he's the one that's been implementing what I've been asking him to do, patrols on that stretch of road for several
Rodney,
weeks.
I think a good solution would be to have a portion of the month as sign day for our code enforcement.
I would think.
Where they do it on a regular basis, like of the first and third Tuesdays of every month.
I mean,
Something
whatever.
along those lines.
I'd like to hear from code enforcement if they've talked to these people or what.
Mayor and Councilman, so actually these signs that you pointed out here, Mr. Councilman Braden, so the I guess, the grocery store that's out there. So all that, the wavy arm guy, all that that's been taken down. That's been addressed by one of our officers. The lone wolf sign has actually been addressed by one of our officers as well. I personally actually did the one over here on Harbor today and actually spoke to everybody over there on that district part and let them know that, hey, A-frame signs are not allowed. Wind feather signs are not allowed. I actually gave them a pamphlet that shows them what signs are permitted and what signs are not permitted on the property. So they're in compliance of removing their signs. I gave them a 3-day compliance. If we're going to do another sweep by this weekend, if all these ones that we've addressed if they're not done in compliance, we're going to start citing them.
When did you give them notice?
So one of our new officers that we had start, he actually, to train him, we actually ended up working on a couple of these wind feather signs. I did some myself. All our officers, when we were able to, during our patrols, when we're not answering other calls, we've been tackling these signs as best as we can.
Okay, because I was told that code compliance was making a sweep down through here 2 months ago. And I asked if there was anything done, or if there was any type of communication, any type of anything written up, any type of warning, any type of anything 3 weeks ago, or actually 19 days ago, and still have not heard of anything back as far as what was done 3 weeks ago.
Sir, we actually have open cases on these. So we just have to go back into our case, find out what the compliance time, what the other officers got. I can't tell you what the other officers gave them because we do allow the discretion. They can give up to 14 days, if they want to give them that time frame. So it's basically boils down to officer discretion. I know my compliance time for any kind of the snipe signs, wind feather signs is about a 3-day compliance time.
So one of your officers can give them 14 days to remove a A-frame sign?
Like I said, sir, it's about officer discretion. I mean, of course, that is definitely a little bit too much time for an A-frame sign. Absolutely. I mean, that can be removed in that day, in an hour.
I understand. So they could give somebody 2 weeks to remove a sign or a banner, and then if that's not, if they don't comply, then you go back out, and at some point, it may be 3 or 4 weeks before they go back by there and even look, and the sign's still not down. So now you're going to give them a citation and give them, another 14 days to get the sign down? And if it's still not down, then they got 30 days later to go in front of a magistrate?
No, sir. So what ends up happening, so after they don't come into that compliance, say the officer gives them 14 days, usually how it works, so when we do give them that code citation, which would be a monetary fine, usually that compliance time drops down to half time. So they can give them 7 days, but usually what they work with. So that's usually the general rule that we kind of flow by. And so if it's not done within that 7 days, then the compliance time will actually get shorter. They'll get a $200 code citation, a $300 code citation. It could be where it's, they have 3 days to come in compliance, 2 days they have in compliance, or it can go by every hour until they remove that sign that we can actually do, which we got to give them a reasonable amount of time to remove that sign.
So in your system, if you go out and give somebody a verbal warning and you hand them the flyer that you was handing them, it says here's what's allowed and what's not allowed, you got 14 days or a week to remove it. Is there something in your system that you log that, and then 14 days or 7 days, whatever time they give them?
Absolutely, sir.
It notifies you that this is back up to go check it to see if they're in compliance or not?
Yes, sir. So basically when the officer does the case, he put in the time of compliance time, that he gives them 14 days. And so we have to put in our system. So basically we kind of have an inspection module that's inside our eGov system. So what it does is, so when he programs it in, okay, 14 days compliance time, when he checks it, when that 14 days will actually pops up and it lets them know you have an inspection that comes up. So that's when the officers goes out and does his inspection. If the course of that inspection is, doesn't pass, then the officer takes that next step of issuing the code citation or, or further enforcement action that needs to be required to it.
Okay. Well, I know that it was said that we don't know when these pictures were taken, but every one of them's time-stamped, dated, and actual time that they were taken. So I guess I'm gonna wait about another 2 weeks, and I'm gonna go back through there, and I'm gonna take pictures again, and bring them back to the council again, to hopefully, I mean, I don't know why I got this pet peeve about signs all of a sudden, but I guess just, if you drive these roads like I do every day, you don't notice until somebody starts pointing it out, complaining about it. Which is like I said earlier, when y'all leave, if you drove here and went to that intersection right there at Commons and Airport Road, sit at that red light, count how many signs are crooked. Stop signs, street sign, arrow signs, U-turn signs. I mean, it's incredible, right in that intersection, you look, how many signs. I think there's 2 signs that are straight. There's probably at least 20 signs in that intersection. All the little arrow signs coming around that curve, every one of them's all, I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's just, and then drive down 98, look at all these signs and banners and stuff, just to notice it. And it's, I mean, it's just, it's insane. If we just let it keep going and going and going, our city's just going to, when we put these things in place to stop this kind of stuff, but nobody's doing anything about it, and it's just getting worse and worse and worse.
What about the billboard one that Ronnie was talking about, the Waffle House one that is halfway torn off? Is that a code enforcement, a billboard? The big billboard above Waffle House that says Waffle House on it in black and white? Would that be code?
Councilman Schmidt, I honestly wouldn't be able to answer that question, be truthful, because I know usually those billboards, I guess it's a subcontract like Lamar Signs that does all that. So I don't know. So maybe, or I don't know if our land use attorney can answer that question for me.
Look into it and get back to you. But going back to one other thing for, I don't know if it was clear, maybe it was, but I'm tired, so it wasn't to me. So I'm just going to make sure it was to you. In addition to the NOV process, where we have to give them a reasonable time to correct in the 14-day thing that you all were talking about, there's another method that code enforcement can use and does use in dealing with signs. They can just issue a citation. So what Danny was saying was that he is issuing citations for $100 fines. You know, they are giving them one warning, but they're not required to do anything beyond that. So they will charge them $100 the first time, $200 the second time, and $300 the third time. So they are doing that, correct?
That is correct. So once we give that warning out, because we got to give them that due process. So actually how the code writes and how actually how Florida state statute works under 162 is that we do have to give due process of one warning. So once that one warning is issued out, that's when we go into that process where, okay, so you have that many days to go in compliance. They're not in compliance. That's when we issue that $100 code citation fine. So we give them 2 days or an hour to come in compliance with the signs. Then it's a $200 one. Then it's a $300 one, and we can fine them $300 until, okay, so obviously these code citation fines are not working. Then that's when we do the notice of violation with the notice of hearing. And on top of that, we can still keep fining them until the actual time of the magistrate hearing. And once, of course, the magistrate hearing comes in, they'll assess their fines at the $250 fine, you know, for, you know, can be daily, and then, of course, our $500 fine for the assessment fee.
I mean, I appreciate that. But I guess that goes back to my original question is, our code compliance is complaint driven. So this just gets, I mean, it's crazy. As long as nobody complains about it, then our code officers just keep driving by it and they don't say anything or stop and do anything about it unless somebody complains. So is that something the council needs to change, that we need to get more proactive and enforce our codes and not wait till somebody starts complaining about it? Or because I can tell you, if I had a business out there and somebody complained about my feather flags, I'd be pissed. What about all these other guys? You're not going to take them down?
Rodney, I think 14 days sounds like way too much time to give anybody from a notice of violation. I mean, from a warning to a notice violation. So I think what the council probably could consider is a policy for them to follow on issues such as this. It's like, what's reasonable? I mean, one of those flags can be taken down in 5 minutes. So maybe you warn them and you give them 48 hours or something along those lines. Yeah, or like I said, I'll be back tomorrow. That way it's still fresh in the officer, our code enforcement officer's mind that I just gave this guy a warning. Tomorrow I'm going to go check on him. Something like that. Maybe that's something that can be considered. Kim, how do you feel? And Danny, I mean, is like, would that make your job easier or more difficult or
Let me
more of a
chime in
legal
for just a
issue?
second. As the acting director, I mean, the concept that this is complaint-driven is, I mean, that's a true concept. That's how the department was originally formed years and years and years ago. But to believe that that is the only way that things are being addressed is completely wrong. I mean, at least since I've been on board, and I think when Joey was on board too, he was moving more towards proactive. We're asking these guys to go out and make rounds, and if an officer identifies something that is against the code, then we're asking them to make contact with those people, especially with regards to construction projects and things like that. We want them to act, they've been instructed, if they see a new construction project, pull in, meet the foreman. There's nothing, you don't have to tell them anything's wrong because nothing's wrong. I just want you to introduce yourself and say, hey, you have your permits up and things like that. So our code officers are being instructed to be proactive. But it is, I mean, by state statute, I mean, it almost starts out as a complaint-driven division. And it's similar to the sheriff's office. I mean, the sheriff's office, do they have investigators? Absolutely, but most of what they do is complaint-driven. So I just want to be fair to my guys here that, I mean, yes, we are complaint-driven, and if we didn't have so many complaints that were minimal, I mean, they would have more time to go out and be proactive. So, I mean, it's a balance for these guys. They have to balance where they spend their time. There's 70 miles of road in Destin city limits. That includes Highway 98. That's a lot of road for 8 guys to cover. I mean, that's just a lot of road. So, I mean, they're doing their best. So, I mean, if we want to triple the force, then we can do that. But I just feel I need to stand up for these guys a little bit, and because, yeah, they're responding to the complaints, and we get a ton of them. I mean, a ton of them. And most of them are documented that we can go look at, and we're getting better at documenting them in our new system. And that's why we got the system, because I want to be able to pull it up and find out where we're at with things. So if you just give them a chance, I think this is going to move forward in the direction you want it to. And in 2 weeks, we'll have our new director here to lead this thing by the horns and get them out there doing that. So
You said it's complaint-driven is state statute, so is that, I'm confused. Is it the department run off complaints, but they can also be a little proactive if they want to, or?
No, the residents, if they want to complain about an item, can. What the state did within the last year was make it mandatory. If you're going to complain about it, then you need to put your name on it and you need to put your address on it. And that's a state statute. Can we be proactive, and can officers on their own identify things that are outside of code? Yeah, they can. And they can take action on it.
Thank you. I'm done, Mayor.
Comment to this, yeah.
The only question I have is, when was the last time we updated the sign ordinance? Because, you know,
I think we're in the process, right?
Yeah, we haven't
Yes.
updated the sign ordinance in my 6 years here, but we're working on it now.
Okay, and that, I was going to point out that, you know, I was here when we wrote the first one, and I've seen several updates, but it's not as simple as you may think it is.
Well, there is a constitution, so yes.
Yeah, that tri-sign, put it on straps and put it around your body and walk around with it, we can't regulate it at all under current law, it appears.
Rodney, I got an idea. Maybe just you and me could drive around and we'll start calling and making complaints.
Yep.
We'll get these signs taken care of.
The point I make is that code enforcement has not a simple job here. When we wrote that, and I imagine still in that ordinance, there are a whole lot of exceptions. And so we need to look at the ordinance and maybe make it simpler, or if there are changes, we need to change them and not, tell code enforcement to go accomplish impossible mission of trying to figure out what in the world they're supposed to be doing with an ordinance that is pretty fuzzy. So
Well,
we need to
what-
review it.
Yeah, one of the considerations as we rewrite the LDC is that, we've had vision sessions, what we want our community to look like. That's a good time to address signage. There's places the signage is encased in brick and no direct lighting, no neon, stuff like that. So that's something that we probably need to revisit that. We're fixing to change our view corridor on Highway 98. And of course, you and I both have businesses that have neon signs, but at the same time, is that what we want our view corridor to look like in the future? And so probably the rewrite of the LDC and the sign ordinance is time where this council needs to have that discussion and
And
make
we
those
will.
kind of decisions.
And I just anticipate it'll be as exciting as the first sign ordinance, which was quite an exciting experience. But, the definition of a sign is one point. Does a sign that we regulate have a permanent place on the ground? The ordinance used to say that. These signs don't have a permanent place on the ground if you take them and put them out every day. So it gets very, very complicated, and code enforcement needs something simpler.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Braden. Thank you, Mr. Destin. Move on. Rodney, that's all you had tonight? Okay, Mr. Wagner.
Awesome. So before Waste Management was coming up today, and I probably scheduled this months ago, I wanted to do a walkthrough of their tour and facility and get in the truck and, just figure out everything there is to do. And that way there's facts and figures and no hearsay. So on the 20th, I'm going to be going with them and some of the staff. It just kind of worked that way. So I wanted to make it public record that we'll be going over there on Wednesday, 7/20 at 10 a.m. And we're going to do the whole facility tour. So I'm going to get the jacket on and go play dumpster dive in it. So we're working on them right now because corporate's getting a little scared about what the video on the premise looks like. But I'll have a body cam and ask for permission or ask for forgiveness. Yeah. Anyways, yeah, so I was just letting you guys know on that, and then that's about it. Yeah, so if you guys are interested, I highly recommend getting with Deanna. That's their point of contact for communication stuff, so she's put this all together for us, so, yep.
Thank you, Bobby. Mr. Destin. I know Mr. Bagby does, so we'll just dive into it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a draft ordinance for y'all's consideration. There we go. We talked about, one of the things when I came back on was the staff approached me about changing the procurement policy, and it was definitely out of date. As an example, I have for unbudgeted items, I have $25,000 spending authority in my job, and for budgeted items, I really don't have any limit on my other than. And the example that I gave my board was, well, look, we're a small organization, 16 people. We spend, you say you want to limit it, we spend $30,000 every 2 weeks on payroll. I approve it, I check it, I make sure the PTO, and then it gets spent. Every 2 weeks, the city manager approves about $165,000 payroll for this city. And to say, oh, well, if he's going to spend more than $5,000, I'm not sure we can trust him. So I'm just trying to bring a little reality in here, and I gave you two versions. I prefer the table version, version 2, but some people are Word people, and if y'all want to go with version 1, I'm more than happy to accommodate that. Let me pull that one up here. But the purchasing policy, the procurement policy, and I also gave you an example. The table comes pretty much from a COE, and the word policy, I asked the League of Cities who in this area had the best policy, and they said Crestview did. And Crestview was kind enough to share their policy with me, so I included that in your read ahead also. I included our previous two purchasing policies. I don't know, Mr. Braden or somebody, maybe Mr. Destin could say, there was a section in 1907. It just struck me as a city manager and a council member or mayor and a city manager got into it about something. Maybe ICMA had, best practices, or somebody had best practices, and the city council or the mayor at the time wanted to make sure that the city manager understood who had the purse strings. So I kind of deleted a lot of that language that just kind of seemed mean, petty. I wasn't going to use that word, but, and I have the draft ordinance. So I'll answer any questions on how we got to where we got in the draft ordinance or how we got to the amounts, but it's pretty self-explanatory. It's time that we empowered our city manager and our staff to buy the things that they need. And my next thing to attack, based on the staff's feedback, is, what it is, what constitutes, I guess, a purchase of an item that has to be tracked. Because right now it's $1,000, and it should be $10,000. That's what most places use. Most public entities, I know HOAs, that's the recommended thing, because that's got a lifespan, or it's got a cost that you have to replace it and you have to budget to replace it. But we can buy a lot of things that cost $1,000 that won't last 2 years. So we just need to bring our policies into the 2020s. So I'll make a motion.
Do we need a motion for something like that, or would you just like to direct our staff to produce the ordinance, Jim?
Yeah, well, I've given it to the staff, so.
How would you guys like to handle it? What do you think would be the best way? I mean, we can make a motion to accept the draft, right? Or
Yeah, I'm sorry.
or develop it?
I think Jim presented two alternative resolutions, so,
Yeah.
I mean, I think, Jim, you're looking for council to select the one you like best, right?
You want one or two? It doesn't really matter to me.
Doesn't number 2 give more,
Highlights.
I mean, it breaks it down into 0 to 1, 1 to 5, 5 to
Right.
15, 15, but you said you like that better.
I like that better because it's a table format,
Right.
and I'm, being a.
Rather than just 0 to 25?
Yeah.
Right, well, I mean, I'm fine with the second.
And that's for unbudgeted
Unbudgeted
items,
items,
yeah.
right.
And then I would recommend that we go up to 50,000 for
Right.
budgeted items.
Right.
Since
I like the
he's-
second document.
Okay.
Rodney,
Okay.
you got your name up there?
Yeah, what was the amount for unbudgeted items?
Up to 25,000. It has to be approved by, if we go with version 2, that would have to be approved by the director, the finance director, and the city manager. And then above 25,000 can only be approved by the council. And then for budgeted items, he could go up to 50,000 because, the truck that used to cost 15,000 that he could sign off on now is 25, 30,000. And I'm not sure we approve the trucks, but we approve them in the budget, just like we do the payroll. We approve them in the budget, and then he pays the people. He should be able to go buy the trucks once we've approved him
Yeah,
buying 6 trucks.
I'd agreed with that, we've already approved it in the budget, so it shouldn't have to come back to council.
Yeah.
Number
Number 2, version 2.
Kim, would you prefer that we just have a consensus here and you guys prepare the ordinance? He's already given you the examples of what everybody seems to favor number 2 as your starting point and bring it back, or do we need to do
I think we're fine with the consensus that you all prefer number 2, and we'll finalize it and bring it back.
That's great.
is that good
Okay.
with everyone? I see everybody nodding their head, so let's go that route.
We got it. Understood,
Yes,
so
sir.
it won't have to be
Yes.
advertised.
Resolution. Well, that's why I was trying to clarify,
He knew what
whether
he
we were gonna
meant.
Make a motion. All right. Okay, what else, sir? Is that it?
Curtis, are you willing to serve on the Public Works and Public Safety? Okay, I will have an application. Sorry? I will have his application to you before the next meeting, and I will be putting in the name of Curtis Smith to be my representative on the Public Works Public Safety Committee. If you need that, if not, I'll make that motion tonight if I can get a second.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Tag, you're it, sir. Ayes have it, so moved. Okay, Ms. Aber.
At 10 o'clock on Monday night? No, I have nothing. Let's go home.
Mr. King.
Nothing for me, sir, thanks.
Mr. Smith.
Sorry, thank you. Couple things. I know. Well, I can't wait 2 more weeks or 3. I had a few people contact me about the big barge in the harbor, and then Ms. Bell mentioned it again tonight, and I didn't follow up with Danny and Lance about that.
Shit we can do about it.
Do we have anything about the big barge in the harbor? Or I know that I heard the sheriff's department might have some information about it. Not just a barge, but the big building.
That barge used to be the Crab Island Sandbar. Once all the new ordinances came into effect, the owner decided not to continue doing business out there. He's now sold it to someone. We heard a rumor that they were going to go out and start doing business without their permits. That was coming from some of the other operators out on Crab Island. We're trying to get in touch with the owner now. We've been trying to for about a week and a half and haven't had any success doing so. But our intention is to find out who the owner is and make contact with him and find out what his intentions are. He has put motors on it and has got it registered now, so it's no longer a barge, it is a vessel.
And so then having it in certain locations in the harbor where he's anchored up, does that now change because he's a vessel?
Right. With him being a vessel, if he was a barge, he couldn't be there. With him being a vessel, he's perfectly legal where he's at.
There's like a time limit for being just in the middle of the harbor or wherever he is?
I would have to go back and double check, but I'm not familiar with the time limit.
Thank you for the information.
Sure.
Mr. Destin, I had a question today, and hopefully you might be able to provide some insight. And if this is a lengthy answer, we can do another night. But I'm curious why the city of Destin has never put a franchise tax on Destin water users. And maybe you might know that. You want to use a microphone or?
We had a franchise agreement with Destin Water Users. Are they still here?
Yeah, they are, both of them.
Well, we can let them give us a history update. We had a franchise, we had litigation where we've had some issues with them, and I'm not sure if the franchise agreement is even still in effect. That's been many years ago, perhaps. Representative has a better recollection.
Is that meaning you need a franchise agreement to put a franchise
agreement.
tax?
I don't recall that we ever had a fee, but can't remember.
So I guess my next question is then what
Lockery
agreement do we
Burnett,
have?
10 Country Club Drive, Destin, Florida. I'm the general manager here representing Destin Water Users. There was a franchise fee. The franchise fee was determined to be illegal. We predated the city and we're operating in the rights of way and have continued operating in the rights of way of the city of Destin. And my brief understanding of the litigation that went on with that is that because we predated the city, you could not continue charging a franchise fee. So there was a fee, and we did pay it from George French through Eric Smith, which would have been in the 90s, is when the franchise fee was.
So I guess I'm more asking about the customer franchise fee that like we charge now potentially on the first ordinance reading 3% to our customers to use for waste management. Waste management has nothing to do with that 3%. They just collect it for us and they give it to us.
Right, and that's what was determined to be illegal, and that's what we stopped collecting and paying to the city back in the 90s.
Oh, paying to the city meaning collecting and paying it for us,
Correct.
not charging. We weren't charging you.
Well, you charged us with collecting that fee from the residents and paying that.
And there was litigation between Destin Water Users and the city of Destin
That's correct.
back in the day?
Yes.
And the attorney that handled our side was Suzanne Brownless, wasn't it?
Correct.
And so we also came to the conclusion that Waste Management or the Gulf Power, they don't give us a nice big playing field at Morgan Center at a really reduced price. So at the end, you might call it a settlement. It never went completely to trial, I don't think, although it may have. But in any event, we decided that we had a good working relationship with water users, that we didn't need to foul up.
Thank you. And it's not about Destin water users. It was more about, in the past discussions over waste management, we've been told, and it's been brought up about, thank you, Mr. Lockwood, about we should align our franchise fees with our other utilities. And so I just had the question today of, well, Destin water users is one of our utilities, and we don't have one. And
But they could,
Mr. Destin was going to give us the
they
answer.
control the
so thank
potable
you.
and non-potable water that comes in.
Gotcha. That's perfect. No, I appreciate it. Last thing, I have Destin High School, not much to say, but I'm looking forward to probably at the next meeting, whether it's me or whether it's the high school representatives, staff, they all met together recently based on the motion. There's been ongoing discussions, so thank you to the staff and city manager, and that's continuing, and I really am expecting hopefully at the next meeting in August that we will be hearing a pretty good update for an update of where they all stand. So I look forward to hearing that in
Thank you for
August.
getting that. Yes,
Sure.
I'm glad to hear that
Gotcha.
too.
And that is all I have tonight.
Kim,
Nothing, thank you.
city attorney, Kyle?
Nothing.
Last, before we hit the gavel, no, I'm done too. I was done an hour ago. Our last opportunity for public comment, so come on up, Marcy.
Not that we're all raring to go, honey.
One person was on the city council in 2018 and 2019, so I want to give you guys an education in case you weren't here. There was a short-term rental ordinance passed in 2018, and it was amended, I believe in 2019 or 2020. What year? Do you remember? No, I don't know anything. Well, if you had allowed me to at least say this, because y'all were having this big, huge discussion about short-term rentals and garbage, in that amendment of that short-term rental ordinance, it specifically states that the short-term rentals are supposed to have one garbage can per bedroom that they're renting. And if I could have kept the man here so he could reiterate it for me, because he came to our task force meetings. I was at the first task force meeting as a citizen. I attended every meeting. I came in from out of town to attend a meeting and went back out of town, so I wouldn't miss one. I never called in, I was there in the audience. Second task force, I was a member of that task force. I attended every meeting. I had information for you guys before you made the decision to put an extra tax on the citizens for overages that are caused by short-term rentals. They are required to have a garbage can per bedroom, if I'm not mistaken. And y'all didn't want to hear that, and I was shut down, and I did not appreciate the way you spoke to me. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yes? That's what I thought we voted on.
Well, we voted on first reading. It
That's
comes back for
correct.
second reading.
Sure does.
So we can still address that issue.
Yeah.
And hopefully
And,
we will.
That's not Waste Management's problem, that's our problem.
well, yeah, it's our problem, not only that, but those fines and penalties apply to every single person in the city, not just short-term rentals.
It goes back to your code discussion earlier, though, right?
Correct.
But if nobody complains about it, then they only have one garbage can.
There you go. John? Too bad.
No, it's late. Sorry, I'll be quick. With the waste management, for the 3 strikes, is that 3 strikes in 1 year, or is that 3 strikes for a lifetime?
It's
All depends on who you are.
2 warnings and then you
For
can start
you,
getting fined.
3 strikes like in a day and you're done.
Okay.
It
No, but
doesn't,
that-
it doesn't
that's a
roll.
good question.
It does not roll over, so
Okay.
the new year does not reset it.
So
in accordance
I
with
see a lot of people paying fines on year 2 then, so. Then the next thing I got, building on Mr. Bagby, talking about you know or you don't know. I do know there's a lot of legal charters still that's out there. So, example at Joe's, recently there's been a unmanned code enforcement truck, and I know the legal charters know that there's no one in that truck.
It only works so long.
Right. So, but that's all I got.
Well,
It is true.
one comment, Mayor, is that we are allowed to, in the budget or through council contingencies, pay some money for some overtime, perhaps for our code enforcement people, and put somebody in the truck. So we need to look at that for the next meeting, and if we need to make a budget adjustment, then we can do that.
Yeah, and almost on that subject, because we are talking about waterborne crafts, you know, we really need to look at how to approach what's going on in our harbor. We have sunk boats in the harbor. Now, some of it's Coast Guard related and FWC related, but when you have a designated anchorage as a city, like Fort Lauderdale and stuff like that, you have a lot more leverage on what can be in there, how long it can be in there, and there is Florida statute that these guys that are staying, especially there's some sailboats, if they stay there 90 days, they got to go out for a day, leave Destin Pass, go out in state waters and come back, and then they can anchor back up and stay 90 days. But if you have an anchorage, it may give us some leeway to where you can't do that. And that's something that we need. We got to look into that. Yeah. So that's something, I'm not going to direct staff, maybe.
Next meeting.
Maybe Dewey, we can do a little Googling and maybe I'll reach out to the mayors down there and see exactly how they set up their harbor protocols and their anchorages.
Yeah, to me, and y'all are down the harbor a lot more than I am, but it's a flywheel. I think the more fines that we do, the more fines we collect, the word gets out, oh, they're actually enforcing the signs or the boats or the unauthorized boat, you know, rentals. People learn. That's my whole thing with this waste management thing. People learn. Sometimes they learn painfully, but they will learn, and you will see a lot less of that behavior. We just got to get it to, we're just kind of making a little noise. Once we see some people in the paper paying big fines, it'll stop.
Thank you.
And real quick.
Thank you, everyone. Meeting adjourned.